Chapter 440. She waved the heaven and earth fan, and countless immortal flowers and spiritual plants appeared out of thin air and circled in the air. Emotienga shouted softly, "Go!" The fragrant flowers and plants instantly emitted a fierce momentum, and the spiritual aura exploded, raising a lush slope to the ground. Not bad. Its power isn't great, but its control of spiritual aura is very exquisite. The voice in the Fusheng sword praised, "Your natal magic weapon is really marvelous. Your ancestor must have been a brilliant person to be able to think of such a magic weapon." Unfortunately, Mo Tiange had told Fu Yaozi about Mo Yaoqing, and he sighed with emotion after hearing her experience. Fu Yaozi was a strong-willed person, so he admired cultivators like Mo Yaoqing who never gave up despite experiencing difficulties. He also heard that she, as a female cultivator, didn't want to be burdened by her appearance and was very intelligent, so he admired her even more. Mo Tiange also sighed when she thought of Mo Yaoqing. Without her beauty, Mo Yaoqing would have become one of the famous great cultivators in Yunzhong. Unfortunately, her beauty not only didn't bring her any benefits, but it also harmed her life. Okay, you've grasped 50 to 60% of the wonders of this heaven and earth fan, so you've passed for the time being. 50 to 60%? Mo Tiange was surprised. Only 50 to 60%? Of course. Fu Yaozi's voice was still calm. This fan is your natal magic weapon, but it's hard for you to understand it with your current realm. It's already not bad for you to display 50 to 60% of its power. You'll only be able to display its full power when you reach the nascent soul realm. At this point, Fu Yaozi sighed again. Otherwise, with my ability, how could I easily admire others? Mo Tiange couldn't help but mutter in her heart. If he and Mo Yaoqing were born in the same era, he would have fallen in love with her, right? Unfortunately, the two of them were tens of thousands of years apart, so they couldn't meet. Speaking of which, although she didn't have as deep feelings for this master as Lord Daoist Jinghe, she still admired him after getting along with him for several years. He was kind, upright. If Mo Yaoqing had met such a person back then, she probably wouldn't have such prejudice against men. "Master, what should I do next?" "Cultivate." Fu Yaozi said, "These past few years, Master has already taught you a lot of magical techniques. Now, even if you were to face a nascent soul cultivator, you shouldn't be completely defenseless. What you lack the most right now is cultivation. If you can improve your cultivation, your strength will naturally increase." Mo Tiange nodded. There was no need to think about advancing to the nascent soul stage in a short period of time. Advancing to the nascent soul stage was not a simple matter. Even if everything was ready, it was normal to only have results after 10 or 20 years of seclusion. As for Fu Yaozi, he was only a wisp of divine consciousness. Although he could reside on the Fusheng sword, he could not wait until that moment. Mo Tiange quickly returned to the virtual sky world to enter closed-door meditation. Under Fu Yaozi's guidance and with the help of various spiritual herbs, she was originally only a step away from completing the core formation realm. As long as there were no accidents, she would be able to advance within 2 to 3 years. While Mo Tiange was hiding in the desolate land of the Western continent, preparing to advance to the peak stage of the core formation realm, the whole of Yunzhong was turned upside down because of the whereabouts of Qin Wei. In Eastern Tang's Jueyan sect, 7 or 8 people gathered in the Immortal's cave of the head Grand Supreme Elder, Master Daoist Yuan Mu. These people were either sitting or standing. Half of them were top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong, while the other half were only in the core formation realm. The person sitting in the first position was naturally Master Daoist Yuan Mu, the head Grand Supreme Elder of Jueyan sect. He was the cultivator with the highest cultivation level in Jueyan sect and one of the strongest among the late nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. A sect that could become a big shot among the cultivation sects in Yunzhong was bound to have many talented and powerful cultivators. The reason why Jueyan sect had occupied the title of the #1 cultivation group for so many years and never declined was because it never lacked late nascent soul cultivators, and its strength had always been at the top of Yunzhong's cultivators. This Master Daoist Yuan Mu was less than 1,000 years old, but he had long entered the late stage of the nascent soul realm. For so many years, he had always been one of the most powerful cultivators in Yunzhong. Sitting next to Master Daoist Yuan Mu was a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator who was about the same age as him. He was the ancestor of Sky Snow City's Ling clan, Ling Xiu. Although Ling Xiu was only in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm and his strength couldn't be considered second in Juyin sect, he had a very good relationship with Master Daoist Yuan Mu and was good at making friends with people of the same generation, so his status in Juyin sect was also extraordinary. As for the core formation cultivator standing behind Ling Xiu, he was Ling clan's descendant, Ling Yunhe. In front of the head Grand Supreme Elder and the ancestor, even though Ling Yunhe was the sect head of Juyin sect, he could only stand. Aside from these three Juyin sect hosts, the other people in the guest seats were monks and scholars, all dressed differently. Sitting on the left was an old monk with a white beard, white eyebrows, and a kind face. If Imo Tiange was here, she would definitely recognize this old monk whose eyes were always closed. He was revered Wu Ming. Behind him stood Wu Ming, who tried to rob her but lost the inescapable net. Sitting on the right was a fair-skinned, beardless young scholar in his 20s. This scholar was young, but he was already in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. His cultivation level was unfathomable. The core formation cultivator behind him looked like a middle-aged scholar. He was actually Han Shizhi, who once set up an ambush in Sky Snow City to snatch the Fuxing sword. Three great late-stage nascent soul cultivators representing the three great cultivation factions of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism were now gathered together. If outsiders found out about this, they would definitely turn pale with fright. You too. Master Daoist Yuan Mu was the first to break the silence. He looked at the monk and the scholar and said, "What should we do about this matter? Today, we have to come up with a plan. You can't just not take a stand." Upon hearing this, the young scholar put down the teacup he'd been holding and said with a smile, "Brother Daoist Yuan Mu, our righteous path has always been the leader of your sect. Regarding this matter, Brother Daoist should naturally take the lead." Revered Wu Ming, who'd been smiling like the Maitreya Buddha, just nodded without saying anything. Seeing this situation, Master Daoist Yuan Mu secretly frowned. Logically speaking, with Juyin sect's status in Yunzhong, he should have taken the lead and expressed his stance first. However, the attitude of these two old fellows made him unhappy. At a time like this, they just had to make him speak first. After pondering for a while, Master Daoist Yuan Mu finally opened his mouth. "Fellow Taoists, this matter is of great importance. It can be said that it affects the fortune of Yunzhong for 1,000 years. As the leaders of the three great factions of the righteous path, it's really not a good thing if we continue to make excuses. Why don't we tell each other about our plans and come up with a workable solution? What do you think?" Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu's words make sense. Revered Wu Ming was still smiling. He put his palms together and said, "Now that things have come to this, I'm sure none of our three sects are willing to give up this opportunity. If not for this, we wouldn't be sitting here together." The old monk's words finally made Master Daoist Yuan Mu feel a little better. He immediately said, "That's right. Since both of you have chosen to come to my Juyin sect to discuss this matter, I believe that both of you have the intention to cooperate, right?" Hearing this, revered Wu Ming uttered the name of Buddha and nodded slightly. Seeing this, Master Daoist Yuan Mu turned to the young scholar. "Mr. Yu, what about you?" "Naturally." The young scholar lightly waved the folding fan in his hand and said casually. On the surface, they had reached an intention to cooperate. Master Daoist Yuan Mu smiled. "Since both of you have the same idea as me, then there's an explanation for this matter." After a pause, he said, "Both of you know that if we want to open that mysterious space, just the items in the hands of our three sects aren't enough. We also need to find the Heavenly Demon Tower and the supporting life sword." Revered Wu Ming nodded. The matter of the 5 saints was originally caused by the appearance of the Heavenly Demon Tower. However, we still don't know whose hands the Heavenly Demon Tower ended up in. What should we do? The young scholar surnamed Yu smiled faintly. The whereabouts of the Heavenly Demon Tower is easy to deal with. Hearing this, Master Daoist Yuan Mu looked at him. What does Mr. Yu think? Scholar Yu said, no matter whose hands the heavenly demon tower ends up in, it still needs to be used together with the other 4 holy items in order to be effective. Since that's the case, we just need to gather all the other holy items together, and the owner of the heavenly demon tower will naturally appear. When he said this, everyone else couldn't help but nod. So, the most important thing for us now is to find the supporting life sword. Everyone knows about the supporting life sword. For the past 10 years, all the major forces in Yunzhong have been searching for the whereabouts of that female cultivator from the outer endless sea. It can be said that everyone has turned Yunzhong upside down, but this female cultivator seems to have disappeared without a trace. Under such circumstances, everyone thinks that it's very likely that this woman has left Yunzhong and returned to her hometown, right? That's right. Master Daoist Yuan Mu nodded. It's been more than 10 years, and many forces in Yunzhong have been searching for her, but they actually haven't found a single clue. Unless this person isn't in Yunzhong, it's really hard to explain. But if we can't find the supporting life sword, we can't cooperate even if we want to. Scholar Yu's words caused everyone present to fall silent. None of the 5 holy items could be missing. This was the crux of the problem. Although the heavenly demon tower had disappeared decades ago, everyone knew that it must still be in Yunzhong. It was just that the person who obtained it didn't want to publicize it. But this supporting life sword, it was hard to say. Since Mr. Yu said so, you should have already thought of a countermeasure, right? Ling Xiyu, who was sitting at the side, said. Scholar Yu still smiled faintly. He glanced at Ling Xiyu and nodded lightly. That's right. I have indeed thought about this for a long time. Although I haven't thought of a definite solution, I have some ideas. Master Daoist Yuan Mu was delighted. Mr. Yu, please speak frankly. Scholar Yu said, everyone, do you really think that the female cultivator from the outer endless sea has left Yunzhong? Master Daoist Yuan Mu and revered Wu Ming were stunned. What did he mean by that? Scholar Yu continued, speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. The juniors of our 3 sects have all seen this female cultivator with the surname Qin before, but none of us know her true origins. Am I right? Ling Yunhe and the other 2 involuntarily nodded. There was no need to talk about Zhu Wu. He knew the least. Han Shizhi and Ling Yunhe had both conversed with her before, but even Ling Yunhe, who had gone through danger together with them, didn't know this female cultivator's true origins. Cultivators from the outer endless sea. The so-called outer endless sea refers to outside the inner endless sea of Yunzhong. Other than the islands far away in the depths of the sea, we, the people of Yunzhong, also call Yuan Province and Shaoyang the outer endless sea. When Scholar Yu said this, a thought flashed in Ling Yunhe's mind, and he blurted out, Senior Yu means that this Qin Wei might be from Yuan Province or Shaoyang. Scholar Yu shook his head lightly. Not necessarily, but we can't rule out this possibility. Chapter 441. Emo Tienga opened her eyes, her face full of joy. She looked down at her hands, which were sparkling like jade and surrounded by spiritual aura. They were even richer than before. Fu Yaozi's praise came from the Fuxing sword. Not bad. In just 3 years, you've reached the peak stage of the core formation realm, and your realm is stable. Sure enough, your aptitude is extraordinary. Emo Tienga withdrew her spiritual aura and said, if it weren't for Master's guidance, Disciple wouldn't have reached the peak stage so smoothly. Fu Yaozi chuckled but didn't say anything. This wasn't a compliment. If it weren't for his guidance, with Emo Tienga's aptitude, it would have been almost impossible for her to advance so smoothly even though it wouldn't have been a problem. During this advancement, she didn't waste any spiritual power or medicinal pills. With Fu Yaozi's experience and vision, he did the right thing at the right time and achieved the best result. Master, since I've reached the peak stage of the core formation realm, should we go to the Sea of Returning Ruins next? There's no hurry. Fu Yaozi said, before going to the Sea of Returning Ruins, you must prepare something that can restrain devil aura. Emo Tienga was stunned and puzzled. But Fu Yaozi said, for some reason, there's a very powerful devil aura in that wonderful place. If you don't have something that can restrain devil aura, you'll inevitably be in a mess. I see. Tiange thought for a moment, then took out the lotus scarlet umbrella from her Qianquan bag. Master, what do you think of this? The divine sense from the Fuxing sword flew out and circled around the lotus scarlet umbrella. Fu Yaozi said, this thing has a miraculous effect in isolating devil aura. However, in my opinion, the best magic weapon you have to restrain devil aura is your natal magic weapon. Natal magic weapon, heaven and earth fan? Tiange was puzzled. Master, disciple's heaven and earth fan isn't special. That's because you're not knowledgeable enough, Fu Yaozi said gently. I can see that the bones of your fan are obviously made of the bones of divine beasts. Divine beasts are born with the ability to restrain devil aura, so it's best to use it to deal with devil cultivators. Tiange was dumbfounded. She suddenly recalled the encounter she had in Descending Star City several decades ago. At that time, Mei Feng, the city lord of Descending Star City, was chasing after her, but she didn't know why she was seriously injured. At that time, she was indeed using the heaven and earth fan to defend herself. In that case, it was actually the dragon bone on the heaven and earth fan that played a role? Then, she remembered where the dragon bones came from. This thing was something she obtained from the divine dragon sacrificial temple when she was still in the foundation building realm. In that sacrificial temple, there was also a strange stone tablet that allowed Ren Yufeng to cultivate his dead aura. Could it be that the dragon bone was actually used to restrain that stone tablet? Then, she associated City Lord Mei's devil aura with the so-called cultivation technique on the stone tablet. According to her conjecture, City Lord Mei should have obtained a stone tablet from the Black Tortoise sacrificial temple that also contained devil aura. She had a faint conjecture in her heart. However, she couldn't confirm this conjecture at the moment. But she might be able to verify it if there was an opportunity in the future. I do have a few tricks up my sleeves when it comes to dealing with demonic cultivators. With these 2 magic treasures of yours, it should be enough. However, you still need to prepare some things. Yes, Master. Tiange wasn't surprised by Fu Yaozi's words. He fought alone against 10 devil monarchs without falling into a disadvantageous position and even forced them to retreat. This master of hers obviously had some kind of unique secret technique to deal with devil cultivators. In addition, the Fuxing sword he possessed was obviously corroded by the devil aura, but he didn't care about it at all. Obviously, the devil aura didn't affect him at all. Following Fu Yaozi's instructions, Tiange left the Western continent several days later. Fu Yaozi's unique secret technique sounded simple. It was nothing more than a set of spells and some things to restrain devils. However, it was precisely because it was simple that Tiange felt it was more powerful than any other method. After all, in a fight of magical powers above the core formation realm, the situation could change in an instant. If it was too complicated, she might as well not use it. However, in this case, she had to prepare even more things. Cloud Wing City was one of the cultivation cities in eastern Tang country. In terms of scale, it wasn't the largest, and in terms of population, it also wasn't the one with the highest population. However, it was undoubtedly the most prosperous one. The reason for this was none other than the fact that it was a city adjacent to the capital of eastern Tang country. It wasn't under the jurisdiction of any cultivation group, and it also had a strong transportation advantage like the capital. Thus, it became the cultivation city with the most transactions. After leaving the Western continent, Tiange, still in the appearance of a young scholar, arrived at Cloud Wing City. Although no one knew Yi Xiaotian was Qin Wei these past few years, with her cautious personality, she still chose Cloud Wing City, a city that didn't belong to any force, to buy what she needed. She had come to this Cloud Wing City several years ago when she was traveling around various countries, so she didn't need a guide nor did she need to ask a broker. She was already familiar with the way and found the biggest shop in the city. Although this city wasn't under the jurisdiction of any cultivation group, Jingshu School, one of the 5 great cultivation groups in eastern Tang country, happened to be near the capital. Because of this, Jingshu School had a lot of disciples in Cloud Wing City, and its shops were also very big. For example, The shop Imo Tiange chose was opened by Jingshu School. Welcome, senior. As soon as she stepped into the shop, a woman greeted her enthusiastically. Because of the founder of Jingshu School, they accepted a lot of female disciples. Therefore, most of the customers in this shop were women. Women were naturally attentive, so they were even more attentive when greeting customers. Because of this, Jingshu School's shop had always been very popular. It was almost always packed with people. However, Imo Tiange was a core formation cultivator, so she didn't need to squeeze with these people. She was directly invited to a private room upstairs and was received by a cultivator with a higher level. When she saw the female foundation building cultivator, Imo Tiange didn't say anything unnecessary. She directly took out a jade slip from her robe and threw it on the table. I wonder if your shop has these materials? The female cultivator took the jade slip and used her divine sense to study it. She then smiled and said, Senior, we have most of these materials in our shop, so we can directly prepare them for you. As for a small portion that's relatively rare, if you trust us, Junior can also prepare them for you in 1 or 2 days. Imo Tiange nodded. Among these materials, some were relatively rare. If it was an ordinary shop, they most likely wouldn't have them. The fact that Jingshu School needed 1 or 2 days to prepare them was already considered very good. She didn't feel like asking shop by shop. Since the other party said they could directly prepare them for her, it saved her a lot of effort. That being the case, you can prepare them for me. Once she finished speaking, she took out a qiankuan bag from her robe and threw it on the table. Does your shop accept these things? The things inside the bag were all kinds of materials she'd accumulated over the years. Some were collected by killing other cultivators, some were exchanged with others, and some were accidentally obtained by herself. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, the spirit stones she had on her had been used up. Coupled with the needs for her cultivation, she'd almost used up all her spirit stones. She might as well take these things out and exchange them for a large amount of spirit stones. Sure enough, when the female cultivator opened the qiankuan bag, she was shocked to see the mountainous pile of things inside. There were tool refining materials, spiritual plants, medicinal pills, magic tools, magic weapons, as well as many demonic beast corpses and beast cores. Some weren't worth much, but some were very valuable. Based on her years of experience in managing the shop, not only would these things offset the materials this senior wanted to buy, but there would also be a lot of surplus. She could also see that these miscellaneous things must have been collected by many cultivators. It seemed this senior looked kind, but his methods were extraordinary. Perhaps many cultivators had died in his hands. Thinking up to this point, the female cultivator didn't dare to be careless. She said respectfully, Senior, the value of these things is astonishing. Junior can't handle them all by myself. Please give me some time. Imo Tiange also knew that if she took out so many things, it would take the other party a lot of time just to calculate the value, so she didn't express any displeasure. She just nodded and said, Do what you need to do. Yes, please wait a moment, Senior. This female cultivator was quite efficient. A moment later, she returned with the other 2 foundation-building cultivators. In front of Imo Tiange, they counted the things in the qiankuan bag one by one, estimated their value, and made a list. The results shocked Imo Tiange. Originally, she didn't care much about these things. Most of them were obtained from other cultivators, and she had already put away some of the more precious items. Even so, the final result was still hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Several 100,000 spirit stones. This was the amount of money she'd been paying Xianxia School for several decades. She just realized she'd used up all her spirit stones, so she had no choice but to exchange these things for spirit stones. She didn't expect them to be worth so much money. However, she forgot that ever since she built her foundation, she never lacked spirit stones. Everything she obtained was directly thrown into the qiankuan bag. After more than 100 years of accumulation, many a little makes an ocean, and it became a terrifying number. Senior. After spending most of the day calculating the items, the female cultivator who called herself Lu Shaoqing handed the list to her. This is the specific value. Please take a look, Senior. Tiange took the animal skin paper and glanced at it several times. These people were quite capable. Not only did they calculate the value, but they also divided the items into categories, making it clear at a glance. Among the items, there were valuable demonic beast corpses, beast cores, magic weapons, and so on. Their prices were slightly lower than the market price, but this was how shops receive things, so the price given by Jingshu Pavilion could be considered fair. She handed the animal skin paper back and said, "That's it." Seeing that she didn't have any objections, these foundation-building cultivators heaved sighs of relief. They glanced at each other, but Lu Xiaoqing said, "Senior, to be honest, the value of these things is too high. With Junior's authority, we can't transfer so many spirit stones in a short time. It just so happens that Senior wants to buy a lot of materials, so Juniors want to offset the cost and make up for the difference. However, because Senior needs time to purchase the things you need, we can't complete the transaction. The reason why Tiange sold these things was to buy the materials on the jade slip. Besides, with her current cultivation level, she wasn't afraid they'd renege on their debt, so she said, "You just need to do it. I'll be staying at Yushi Restaurant in the next few days. When you're done, send the things to Yushi Restaurant." Rest assured, Senior. If it's quick, it'll take 1 day. If it's slow, it'll take 2 days. Juniors will definitely do it for Senior. Tiange nodded. Without saying anything more, she stood up and left Jingshu Pavilion. After she left, the 3 foundation-building cultivators of Jingshu Pavilion didn't move. Senior Marshal Sister Lu. One of the cultivators called out to Lu Xiaoqing with a hesitant expression. "This senior sold so many things. Should we report this to the steward's hall?" Lu Xiaoqing stared at the place where Tiange disappeared. She was silent for a long time before she finally said, "No need to make a fuss. This senior has an extraordinary bearing, so he's probably a disciple of a big cultivation group. If there's something wrong with his background, he wouldn't sell them to us so casually. Besides, judging from the things he took out, not only is his cultivation level profound, but his methods are also extraordinary. We have to do our best." Lu Xiaoqing had a lot of prestige. After she said that, the other 2 foundation-building cultivators didn't have the slightest objection. Right after the 3 of them said that, another high-level cultivator appeared at the top of the stairs. His formidable spiritual aura pressure made the 3 of them shift their gazes in an instant. "Marshal Uncle Lu." The aura-refining disciple who led the guests called out timidly, "This senior." Although Lu Xiaoqing's cultivation level wasn't high, she'd been taking care of the sect's stores for a long time, so her experience was extraordinary. With a single glance, she could tell that the cultivator who just appeared was a nascent soul cultivator. She promptly went to greet him. "Senior, welcome to Jingshu Pavilion." Chapter 442. The appearance of a nascent soul cultivator made the second floor of Jingshu Pavilion quiet down all of a sudden. Even the customers who were previously talking in low voices stopped talking at the same time. Intentionally or unintentionally, their gazes landed on the new nascent soul cultivator. Although there were many nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong, they weren't people they could casually meet. 8 or 9 out of 10 cultivators below the core formation realm had never seen a nascent soul cultivator in their entire lives. The nascent soul senior in front of them looked to be about 30 years old. He had a handsome face and a heroic spirit. However, although he looked young, his pitch-black hair was mixed with a few strands of white hair, adding a bit of vicissitudes to his appearance. But it was also because of this that his originally outstanding demeanor carried a sense of tiredness and loneliness, which attracted the gazes of others even more. "Senior, it's our honor to have you here at Jingshu Pavilion. Junior is Jingshu Pavilion's shopkeeper, Lu Xiaoqing. What can I do for Senior?" Looking at the senior, Lu Xiaoqing's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She had seen countless people and had seen many more handsome men in the cultivation world, but she had never seen such a figure. However, she didn't forget that this was a nascent soul senior. She immediately restrained her thoughts and respectfully invited him to a private room. The screen around the private room isolated them from other people's gazes. The other two foundation building cultivators had already taken away the goods they just traded. Lu Shaoqing stood respectfully to the side, waiting for instructions. Cough, cough. The nascent soul cultivator covered his mouth and coughed twice before speaking. Do you have any medicinal pills for healing injuries in your shop? Lu Shaoqing was stunned, but she suddenly understood. This senior looked young, but he had white hair. As it turned out, he was injured. Although she had such guesses in her heart, she still answered respectfully, Senior, our shop indeed has several medicinal pills for healing injuries. However, Senior's cultivation level is at the nascent soul realm. Even if we have some inherited spiritual pills, they might be of no use to Senior. The nascent soul cultivator nodded. He didn't seem surprised. He threw a jade slip and said, Since that's the case, take a look and see if we have these materials. Lu Shaoqing picked up the jade slip and carefully read it. She then smiled and said, What a coincidence. If Senior had come earlier, we really wouldn't have some things. Coincidentally, a cultivator just sold us a lot of materials, among which were the spiritual plants and monster cores that Senior needed. Really? This coincidence caused the nascent soul cultivator's eyebrows to arch up. However, that was all. He calmly asked, Is the age enough? Our shop's appraiser has seen it. It should meet Senior's requirements. Lu Shaoqing paused and asked, Junior will go get it now and show it to Senior. The nascent soul cultivator nodded. He silently sipped his tea and coughed from time to time, not sparing her a single glance. Lu Shaoqing did not dare to be negligent. She immediately returned to the counter and gave a few instructions to the building foundation stage cultivator who was sorting the items. Soon, she came back with a few spiritual herbs and demon cores. Senior, please take a look. Opening the jade box, there were 5th rank and 6th rank monster cores. Apart from the relatively rare species, they weren't considered rare. There were also a few stalks of spirit grass that made his eyes light up. In the past few days, he had traveled to almost all the big cities in the northern part of Eastern Tang, but he still hadn't found these spiritual herbs. Some people hadn't even heard of them, while some people knew about them, but they said these spiritual herbs were rarely produced in the clouds. He had almost given up hope and looked for another spiritual herb. However, he had never expected that he would find it in Cloud Wing City. Lu Shaoqing observed his expression. At this moment, she was certain that if there were no accidents, this transaction could be considered a success. She couldn't help but smile. Today's luck was really good. Although she spent hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, the items she bought were extremely valuable, and she also made 2 big deals. The things that Senior Yi and this senior wanted were all worth tens of thousands of spirit stones. Yes, I'll take all of these. While she was meditating, the nascent soul cultivator put down the spiritual herbs in his hand and spoke. Lu Shaoqing smiled and bowed, saying, Then, Junior will put them away for Senior? The nascent soul cultivator nodded and said, How much are they worth? Lu Shaoqing quickly put away the spiritual herbs and demon cores in front of her, pasted talismans to prevent the loss of spiritual aura, counted them, and reported the total price. These things, after rounding them up, come to a total of 52,000 spirit stones. If Senior doesn't mind, please wait a moment. Junior will calculate the detailed list. The nascent soul cultivator said, There's no hurry. Since you're the shopkeeper here, you should be well informed. Can I ask you a few questions? Since a nascent soul cultivator asked, how could Lu Shaoqing refuse? She immediately said, If Senior has something to ask, Junior will tell you everything I know. The cultivator coughed twice then asked, Have you heard of the name Yishaon? Lu Shaoqing thought for a moment. Senior, the nascent soul cultivator continued, she's a female core formation cultivator. She should be in the late stage already. He paused for a moment then added, Maybe she's already formed her nascent soul. She's young, in her 20s, very beautiful. Speaking up to this point, the cultivator stopped talking with a slightly hesitant expression on his face. These descriptions really couldn't be considered characteristics. Among female core formation cultivators, many were in their 20s, young, and beautiful. However, if he were to talk about their real characteristics, he felt that it wasn't enough. Sure enough, after Lu Shaoqing heard this, she was very hesitant. Senior, what you said is really hard to distinguish. Moreover, should be in the late stage already, and maybe she's already formed her nascent soul, were too vague. Could it be that this senior also didn't know the cultivation level of the person he was looking for? However, the name Yi Xiaotian did sound a little familiar. She thought carefully for a moment, and a thought flashed through her mind. She then furrowed her brows in suspicion. After pondering for a moment, she finally said, Senior, Junior has never seen the female core formation cultivator you're talking about. However, Junior has heard of the name Yi Xiaotian. The nascent soul cultivator raised his brows and looked at her. Go ahead. More than 10 years ago, Junior heard that there was a core formation martial uncle in the sect who was on good terms with a core formation senior named Yi Xiaotian. That senior was very young, but his cultivation level was already in the late stage of the core formation realm. However, that senior was a male cultivator, not a female cultivator. After hearing this, the nascent soul cultivator remained silent. Lu Shaoqing waited for a while, but he didn't say anything. She couldn't help but call out, Senior? Upon hearing her voice, the nascent soul cultivator finally asked, Then do you know where he went later? Lu Shaoqing shook her head and said, Junior doesn't know. I remember this matter only because Junior has been taking care of the shop for the sect for many years, so I've always paid attention to people and matters. If Senior wants to inquire about this Senior Ye's whereabouts, Junior can report to the sect on Senior's behalf. Upon hearing this, the cultivator nodded and said, You can settle the bill for me first. Lu Shaoqing respectfully withdrew from the room. There was no one else in the private room. The nascent soul cultivator pondered for a while, then took out an animal skin parchment from his bosom. There was a drawing of a young woman on the polished animal skin parchment. He was familiar with her appearance, but he'd never heard of her name. Qinwei, Xingwei. Tiange, I know it's you, but the people in Yunzhong said Qinwei has been missing for more than 10 years. Where am I supposed to find you? After leaving Jingshu School's shop, she didn't immediately go to Yushi Building to rest. Instead, she found another tool refining shop and entered it. Half a day later, she came out of the tool refining shop and spent a large amount of spirit stones. During her years in she found a stalk of black iron core wood. If it was made into a boat, it was said to be able to withstand the gales and huge waves on the sea. Since she was going to returning ruined sea this time, she decided to refine this black iron core wood into a magic weapon first to increase her chances of success. However, her own tool refining technique really wasn't good enough, so she thought it would be better to ask someone else to refine it for her. Yunzhong was so big, so it wasn't difficult to find a tool refining master who could refine magic weapons. After all, black iron core wood was rare, so she couldn't afford to waste it. Fortunately, when she passed by Yunyi City in the past, she heard that there were several tool refining shops with good craftsmanship in the city. She found one with the best reputation and entrusted this matter to him. After that, she took care of some miscellaneous matters before returning to Yushi Building and asking for a quiet courtyard to stay. She meditated and adjusted her breath while waiting for news. She hadn't been to Eastern Tang country for nearly 10 years. When she was talking to the shopkeeper of Yushi Building just now, she heard an interesting piece of news. The three major righteous sects had jointly announced to the world that the real Fuxing sword had appeared, and they invited the owner of the Heavenly Devil Pagoda to gather in Returning Ruins Sea to discuss this important matter. As soon as she heard this news, Tiange couldn't help but laugh. If it was before, she might have really suspected that the Fuxing sword in her hand was fake. However, she had triggered the restriction in the Fuxing sword and was personally taught by Fu Yaozi, so it was needless to say whether the Fuxing sword was real or fake. Presumably, the three major righteous sects deliberately released this news to attract Qin Wei to show up. This plan wasn't brilliant, but it was profitable. If Qin Wei was really still in Yunzhong, she would most likely not be able to resist verifying it. After Fu Yaozi heard this, he said contemptuously, "A bunch of idiots. Even if the Fuxing sword fell into their hands, so what? Can they still find someone who can make the Fuxing sword recognize a master? This was the first time Tiange heard Fu Yaozi talk about others in such a tone. This master of hers had a good temper and had always been a modest gentleman. However, when it came to his Fuxing sword, he couldn't help it. Tiange already knew that the 5 sacred objects needed to recognize a master before they could be used. The 3 major cultivation groups were in a hurry to find the Fuxing sword. Perhaps they already found a master for the 3 sacred objects in their hands? However, this matter couldn't be blamed on the cultivators of the 3 major cultivation groups. They didn't know that the Fuxing sword had already recognized a master. Most likely, they just wanted to get the Fuxing sword and quickly find a suitable master. The people of Jingshu Pavilion acted very quickly. The next day, they delivered the items and spirit stones. After Tiange checked them, the money and goods were settled. Several days later, after wasting more than half of the black iron core wood in the tool refining shop, they finally made a magic weapon. This magic weapon was named the 10,000 Miles Solitary Boat by the tool refining master. Although this name was very vulgar, Tiange was too lazy to object. It didn't matter what it was called. What was important was that this magic weapon could really withstand the strong gales and huge waves in the sea. After getting the 10,000 Miles Solitary Boat and paying the accommodation fee, Tiange didn't stay any longer and set off for returning Ruin Sea. Several days later, at the end of the month, Lu Shaoqing delivered a batch of rare treasures to Jingshu School according to the rules. Coincidentally, she met the nascent soul senior who went to Jingshu School to inquire about Yi Xiaotian and was left behind by the school's nascent soul grandmaster. When this nascent soul senior saw a bottle of medicinal pills, his gaze was immediately attracted. Jingshu School's head Grand Supreme Elder, Progenitor Miao Ying, noticed his expression and asked with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Qin, is there something you're interested in here?" The nascent soul cultivator surnamed Qin was still staring at the bottle of medicinal pills. He asked, "Fellow Daoist Miao Ying, you don't mind if I take a look, right?" "Of course. It's not like it's anything good. If fellow Daoist Qin takes a fancy to it, you can just take it," Progenitor Miao Ying said with a smile. Although these things were precious, they were nothing to a nascent soul cultivator. If she could use this chance to befriend a powerful middle-stage nascent soul cultivator, it would definitely be worth it. After getting permission, the cultivator surnamed Qin raised his hand and the jade bottle automatically flew into his hand. He carefully examined the jade bottle. It seemed like this was the real treasure. Finally, he opened the bottle and sniffed the medicinal pills inside. "Immortal wind dew," he muttered to himself. In the next moment, he raised his head and looked at Lu Shaoqing with a sharp gaze. "Junior, where did you get this medicinal pill?" Lu Shaoqing was startled by his gaze and hastily answered, "A cultivator sold it to Jingshu School." "Oh, that cultivator seems to have quite the affinity with Senior." Most of the spiritual herbs and monster cores that Senior wanted were sold to the store by that cultivator. When he heard this, his expression changed and he asked again, "What's his name? What's his cultivation level? What does he look like? When did he sell it to the store? Where did he go?" After hearing this series of questions, Lu Shaoqing didn't dare to neglect and answered one by one. "Junior only knows that his surname is Yi. He's a core formation realm male cultivator with the appearance of a young scholar. On the day that Senior came to the store, this Senior Yi came to sell a large amount of materials, just right after Senior came. As for where he went, Junior doesn't know." A young scholar with the surname Yi was exactly the same as the Yi Xiaoyun that others said. He took a deep breath, stood up and cupped his hands towards Progenitor Miao Ying. "Fellow Daoist Miao Ying, I'm afraid the person I'm looking for has already appeared. Thank you for your hospitality these past few days. I'll take my leave first." Chapter 443. A month later, on the coast of the Sea of Returning Ruins in the south of Yunzhong, a young scholar stood in the air, looking down at the island under his feet. The island wasn't big, only dozens of miles in circumference. Looking down from above, it looked like a green leaf, so it was called One Leaf Island. In terms of scale, One Leaf Island was pitifully small. Any town or city in eastern Tang had a bigger market than it. But in terms of scale, there was no market in Yunzhong that had a higher standard than One Leaf Island. On this island, core formation cultivators could be seen everywhere, and nascent soul cultivators often showed up. Even the merchants who took care of the shops were cultivators above the foundation building realm. The reason why there were so many high-grade cultivators gathered on this small island with very ordinary spiritual qi was due to its perfect geographical location. Cultivators in Yunzhong usually went to two places to hunt demonic beasts. One was the North Sea in the north, and the other was the Sea of Returning Ruins in the south. In the North Sea, there happened to be a large island called North Pole Island. There were countless demonic beasts around it, ranging from low to high level, so a large number of aura refining and core formation cultivators gathered on North Pole Island to hunt beasts for a living, forming a huge beast core market. But the Sea of Returning Ruins was different. Its beast market wasn't big, and compared to North Pole Island, it was pitifully small. However, it was more famous among high-level cultivators than North Pole Island. This was because the sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins were mostly in the 5th rank and above, and the corpses and beast cores produced by these demonic beasts were exactly what cultivators above the core formation realm needed. One Leaf Island happened to be located at an estuary of the Sea of Returning Ruins, so its location was excellent. Over time, cultivators who came to the Sea of Returning Ruins to hunt beasts formed a small but high-end beast market there. Emotienga stood in the air for a while, then asked, "Master, do you want to stay here? I'm afraid those late nascent soul cultivators are all gathered here, right?" The Fuxing sword let out a soft cry, and Fu Yaozi's voice came. "Go. You've made the Fuxing sword recognize you as its master. With me here, those cultivators can't do anything to you no matter how high their cultivation levels are." Emotienga hesitated for a moment, then believed him. After living together for several years, she and Fu Yaozi had developed a true master-disciple relationship. She believed that her master wouldn't be wrong. He landed at the edge of the One Leaf Island and registered himself at the entrance of the town under the name Yi Shaon. This One Leaf Island was indeed worthy of its reputation of having the highest standards. As soon as they entered the town, they saw many core formation cultivators walking back and forth on the streets. Many of them were foundation-building cultivators who were hawking their wares and taking care of the shops. In other cultivator towns, there weren't many aura-refining cultivators and mortals. Most of them were just doing odd jobs in the shops. Whether it was in the Celestial Pole or Yunzhong, she had never seen so many high-level cultivators gathered in one place. Moreover, among these high-level cultivators, there were often one or two nascent soul cultivators coming and going. One Leaf Island is still the same as before. Fu Yaozi sighed. Although he was shapeless and only had a wisp of divine sense left, his secret technique was astonishing. He could still sense everything around him. Emotienga smiled and said, "Master seems to be very familiar with One Leaf Island." Fu Yaozi said, "I'm not like you. Without the support of a sect, from the moment I stepped onto the path of immortality to the moment I formed my nascent soul, I've always been a rogue cultivator. The life of an individual cultivator isn't easy. When I was in the aura refining and foundation building realm, I was very down and out. After I formed my gold core, I often came to One Leaf Island to hunt demonic beasts, which made my life a lot better." Upon hearing this, Emotienga couldn't help but nod to show she understood. She had experienced the hardships she and second uncle went through in the past, so she was very touched by what Fu Yaozi said about being down and out and out. However, thinking about it this way, this master of hers was really amazing. With an incomplete art of the origin and no heaven-defying immortal fate, he grew from a down-and-out low-level cultivator to the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong. She didn't know how many hardships he had to go through to achieve this. "Master, should we go there and rest for a while before going out to sea?" "No," Fu Yaozi said, "you can't go out to sea alone." Emotienga was stunned. "What do you mean, Master?" Fu Yaozi chuckled. "That place can only be opened if 5 keys are combined into one. What's the use of going there alone? We'll naturally wait for the others to go together." "But..." Mo Tiange was full of questions. Even if her master was giving her ideas behind the scenes, she was only a core formation cultivator in the end. How could she compete with those late-stage nascent soul cultivators? Once the secret place was opened, not to mention benefits, she'd probably be eaten until not even her bones were left. Don't worry, Fu Yaozi said faintly, Master naturally won't let you suffer any losses. Master, I can't not worry. Mo Tiange admitted calmly. Although I have the Fusheng sword in my hand and Master as my backing, I'm only one person in the end. They also have holy objects in their hands. Not only are they powerful, but the forces behind them are also astonishing. Fu Yaozi smiled. It's useless even if they have holy objects. But Mo Tiange was puzzled. Fu Yaozi said, to tell you the truth, among the so-called 5 saints, the other 4 have disciples to pass on their inheritance too, but Master doesn't. Therefore, when Master sealed my divine sense, I did something. As for the other 4, I only sealed their divine sense and part of their secret technique. If a disciple obtained the key and passed on the secret technique to them, their divine sense would dissipate. Only Master's divine sense could exist for a long time. Mo Tiange once witnessed Wanderer Ziwei's method and was left an imprint in her sea of knowledge. Wanderer Ziwei was so talented that he sealed his divine sense for thousands of years. Even after being triggered, his divine sense wouldn't dissipate and could even continue to exist. Therefore, she never doubted Fu Yaozi's method of sealing divine sense. After all, he was the legendary #1 person in Yunzhong. As for the other members of the 5 saints, she also thought the same. They were called the 5 saints, so even if the others were a bit weaker than her master, they shouldn't be too much weaker. Now that she heard Fu Yaozi's words, she realized her master's skill was a notch higher. With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange suddenly realized something and sighed. Master, you're not as honest as you look. What are you talking about? Fu Yaozi reprimanded, although I consider myself an upright and above-board person, I'm not a person without schemes. Yes, from an individual cultivator without any foundation to the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, no one could surpass him for more than 100,000 years. How could this master of hers be completely upright and pure? With this thought, she felt a lot more at ease. Now that she was relieved, she also became interested in the market square of this one-leaf island. Just as she was about to take a stroll, she suddenly felt a powerful divine sense stopping on her. She immediately looked up and saw a cultivator in his 50s sitting by the window on the 2nd floor of a restaurant. He was dressed like a wealthy man from the secular world and was staring at her with a sharp gaze. This person's spiritual aura pressure was strong, but he was a nascent soul cultivator. For a moment, Mo Tiange couldn't figure out what this cultivator meant, but she had Fu Yaozi by her side, so she didn't show any fear. Instead, she smiled at him and cupped her hands to show her respect to this senior. The cultivator was stunned for a moment as if he didn't expect she would act like this. Soon after, both his divine sense and his gaze moved away from her. Mo Tiange heaved a sigh of relief and continued to stroll around the market. It didn't matter whether this person noticed her illusion or something else. In any case, she'd already arrived at the Sea of Returning Ruins. It was only a matter of time before she came into contact with those top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. Brother Nanyor? On the 2nd floor of the restaurant, a young Daoist sitting across from the cultivator looked at him with a smile and a hint of confusion in his eyes. The male cultivator called Brother Nan stroked his grizzled beard and said, "It's nothing. I just happened to discover that this junior is a bit unusual." The young Daoist turned his head to look outside the window. People were coming and going, but that core formation cultivator was already gone. What's unusual about him? This person has a powerful divine sense fluctuation. Moreover, I only glanced at him for a moment, but he immediately noticed me. Is that so? The young Daoist swept his gaze across the street and said with a meaningful smile, "Recently, One Leaf Island has been really lively. Not only did all those old monsters come into being, but the juniors in the core formation realm are also so outstanding." The cultivator surnamed Nan also smiled. He leisurely held his wine cup and took a sip. Brother Rui, based on our many years of friendship, how about you give me a hint? What's your 5 Elements Valley planning to do this time? A hint? The young Daoist rubbed his nose and looked at the person in front of him with a faint smile. What's there to be a hint? Our 5 Elements Valley strength is inferior. We're just here to watch the fun and take advantage of the situation. On the other hand, Brother Nan, your Danxia sect brought a lot of people this time. Heh. The cultivator surnamed Nan laughed self-deprecatingly. Daoist Brother Rui, I might as well tell you the truth. Everyone knows the situation of our dawning pill sect. We really want to seize this opportunity. However, wanting is one thing, but I'm powerless. The cultivator surnamed Nan's words made the young Daoist feel sad. He sighed and said, Isn't that right? Among the 5 great Dao cultivation groups, our 2 groups are the weakest, but at this time, the 5 holy relics unexpectedly appeared, and our strength is inferior. I really don't know if we're lucky or not. Yuan Mu and the others invited us here. On the surface, they said we're all fellow Daoists and we don't dare to hog it for ourselves, but in reality? The cultivator surnamed Nan sneered. They have the holy relics in their hands, and their strength far surpasses us, middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. We're just here to go through the motions. The young Daoist smiled while holding his cup. Brother Nan, could it be that you still can't get over it? Who told you and I to be weaker than others, and our luck to be worse? If we advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, even if we didn't obtain the holy relics, we could still compete with Yuan Mu and the others. Unfortunately, after so many years, you and I are still stuck at this bottleneck and can't advance. Naturally, we can only accept our fate. How could the cultivator surnamed Nen not understand this reasoning? In the end, he just sighed and said nothing. At this time, Immortal was strolling in a tea house, listening to other people's gossip with great interest. The matter of the 5 saints was now a hot topic in Yunzhong. A large number of high-level cultivators gathered on One Leaf Island, and it happened to be the location of the incident, so it was naturally even more popular. During the past month, Immortal had been traveling cautiously, but she didn't know this matter was actually this popular. As it turned out, in addition to the owner of the Heavenly Devil Tower, the 3 great sects also invited nascent soul cultivators from various big forces. Nominally, the things left behind by the 5 saints were the Commonwealth of Yunzhong, so the 3 great sects didn't dare to hog it for themselves. Therefore, after the mysterious space was opened, all nascent soul cultivators could enter and explore it. But was that really the case? Immortal didn't need to think to know the real reason. Now, the matter of the 5 saints had spread throughout Yunzhong, and it was no longer a secret only a few high-level cultivators knew. If the 3 great sects hoarded it for themselves, no matter how powerful they were, they wouldn't be able to withstand the joint attack of others. That being the case, they might as well share some of the benefits with others. In any case, they had the most important holy relics in their hands and were the strongest, so they would still get the biggest benefits in the end. But even though the nascent soul cultivators understood this reason, they still rushed to One Leaf Island like a flock of ducks. After all, when it came to fated chances, luck played a very important role. Who knew if they'd obtained a great fated chance? Deification. This was a temptation that nascent soul cultivators at the top of the cultivation world couldn't resist. Driven by benefits, they advanced wave after wave. Chapter 444. In just a few days, there were more and more nascent soul cultivators on One Leaf Island. Nascent soul cultivators who used to only see 1 or 2 nascent soul cultivators swaggered through the market square now, and many of them were in the middle stage or higher. This gave Immortal more pleasure. She asked for a room facing the street in an inn. When she had nothing to do, she leaned against the window and counted the nascent soul cultivators passing by. She discussed with Fu Yaozi with great interest their cultivation levels, sex, and approximate cultivation techniques. This rare childishness unexpectedly aroused Fu Yaozi's interest, and he enthusiastically discussed with her every day. In the beginning, Immortal thought her master had been trapped inside the Fusheng sword for too long, so she was very interested in everything in the world. Later on, she slowly realized her master was deliberately cultivating her judgment. She was secretly moved when she realized this. Although she called Fu Yaozi master, deep in her heart, the closest master to her was Lord Daoist Jinghe. A few years couldn't compare to a few decades. However, Fu Yaozi's unreserved and careful teaching slowly made her feel reluctant. Every time she thought her master's divine sense might dissipate soon and leave her forever, she felt sad. Of course, this sadness was quickly suppressed. She knew from the beginning that that day would come, so she was mentally prepared. At the same time, she began to practice the technique to restrain devil cultivators. This law formula was obtained by Fu Yaozi from an ancient cultivator's cave dwelling. It was extremely suitable for those who practiced the primordial chaos cultivation method to cultivate. With Fu Yaozi's personal guidance, she was able to avoid any detours and cultivate at a rapid pace. Soon, she saw results. As for the things she bought in Cloud Wing City, she used them one by one, either to refine magic weapons, to concoct medicinal pills, or to make formations. During this process, Fu Yaozi was dismissive of her tool refining level, expressing his disdain. Unfortunately, Immortal didn't feel embarrassed at all. She wasn't a genius who was good at everything like Mo Yaoqing, so it was normal for her to have high and low talents in miscellaneous studies. Although she wasn't good at tool refining, her attainments in pill concocting and formations weren't something ordinary people could achieve. What Immortal found interesting was that as the number of high-level cultivators on One Leaf Island increased, the number of spies in the market square also increased. Most of these spies were paying attention to core formation cultivators who entered the island for the first time. Although they didn't defend them, they were always monitoring them. With Fu Yao by her side, Immortal had a well-thought-out plan. She just pretended she didn't see these informants and continued living her leisurely life. While she was passing her days leisurely, the most important figures of One Leaf Island finally arrived. In the center of One Leaf Island, there was a short peak. It was the place with the densest spirit chi on the island. Although this bit of spirit chi was not worth mentioning compared to the spirit chi of the major sects, it was still divided up by the major factions and built into branches. This short peak was located in the center of the market. Although there were guards on normal days, there were still people coming and going. Only these few days, there were layers of restrictions, and no one was allowed to enter. However, the cultivators of One Leaf Island and the disciples of the major sects did not dare to object because they knew that the top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong were gathered in the branch hall. Welcome grandmasters, martial uncles, to One Leaf Island. Several cultivators slowly walked into the branch hall of Juyan's sect amid the shouts of Juyan's sect's disciples. No need to be so polite. Get up. Master Daoist Yuanmu, who was walking at the front, waved his hand casually. Thank you, martial uncles. The branch head, a core formation cultivator from Juyan's sect, stood up. He was about to step forward and report to the nascent soul martial uncles so that he could leave a good impression on them and fight for a better future for himself. Senior martial brother, the martial uncles are tired, so you don't have to trouble yourselves. Just receive them the way you prepared them. If there are any problems, we'll naturally send someone to inform you. A young cultivator behind the nascent soul Grand Supreme Elders stopped him and said gently. This person was in the late stage of the core formation realm. He had a young face and a kind attitude, but there was an unquestionable decisiveness in his words. The branch head immediately recognized this person as Ling Yunhe, the sect leader of Juyan's sect and the young master of Ling clan. He didn't ask any more questions and cupped his hands in response. Yes, sect leader. However, he looked a little disappointed. Ling Yunhe smiled and said, Senior martial brother, don't worry. If you do things well, the martial uncles will know what to do. Originally, the branch heads of each branch were only in the foundation building realm, but One Leaf Island's situation was special, so they used core formation cultivators. Being a branch head on One Leaf Island wasn't a difficult job because there weren't any high-level cultivators pressuring them and they could also fish for some benefits nearby. However, for core formation cultivators, the spirit veins on One Leaf Island were really lacking, and they couldn't focus on cultivation like they did in the sect. The gains didn't make up for the losses. Therefore, the branch leaders of the One-Leaf Island were mostly old cultivators in the core formation stage who did not have any background. Now that they had such a grand event, they all wanted to show their faces in front of the Grand Elders in the nascent soul stage and win their favor so that they could be transferred back to the headquarters and get some benefits. That was what this branch head was thinking, but unfortunately, he was interrupted by Ling Yunhe. He was still feeling unhappy, but when he heard what Ling Yunhe said and thought about how Ling Yunhe, the sect head, comforted him like this, he felt much better. Thus, he politely agreed and went to do his work. After all the unrelated people left, Master Daoist Yunmu asked, "Brat, where's the person you arranged?" He didn't mention his name, but everyone knew this was what the nascent soul ancestors called Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe stepped forward and said, "Martial Uncle Yun, please wait a moment. Martial Nephew has already informed him to come." Master Daoist Yuanmu nodded. Without saying anything else, he turned around and started chatting with his junior martial brothers. Before long, a foundation-building cultivator walked in respectfully. Disciple Ling Yixuan greets grandmasters. Master Daoist Yuanmu was a bit surprised to see this person. He didn't expect the person Ling Yunhe sent to handle such an important matter would actually be a foundation-building cultivator. However, this Ling brat had always handled matters appropriately, so he didn't think too much about it. He raised his hand and said, "No need to be so polite." When Ling Yixuan stood up, Ling Yunhe asked, "Xiaoshun, how's the matter going?" Ling Yixuan respectfully lowered his head. He then took out a jade slip from his robe and answered, "Reporting to grandmasters and martial uncles, this is the list of core formation cultivators who recently came to One-Leaf Island. Disciple has already ordered people to investigate them." Ling Yunhe took the jade slip then presented it to the nascent soul elders. The nascent soul elders looked at it one by one before returning it to him. Ling Yunhe looked through it then asked, "Did you personally check on all these people?" Reporting to martial uncle's sect head, "Disciple has. The movements of all suspicious people are all within my grasp, so I can invite them at any time." Ling Yunhe nodded with satisfaction then turned around to report to the several elders in the hall. "Martial uncles, should we immediately invite them?" Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at his junior martial brothers. Ling Xiu showed a faint smile then said, "It's better to do it sooner rather than later." Master Daoist Yuanmu nodded then glanced at Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe understood and left the branch hall with Ling Yixuan. After she finished cultivating for the day, Immortal went out for a stroll. She exchanged a large number of spirit stones from Cloud Wing City, and One-Leaf Island was the most high-end market in Yunzhong, targeting core formation cultivators. How could she let go of this opportunity? When she was free, she went out for a walk and bought some precious things, which might come in handy in the future. Even if she didn't have any use for them, it would still be good to bring them back to the celestial pole. After she finished strolling in the market, she returned to the inn. Before she entered her room, the Fuxing sword on her back suddenly let out a cry. Fu Yao's voice rang in her head. "Someone's here." Mo Tiange smiled but didn't mind. In the market square, although everyone wouldn't casually use their divine sense, it wasn't to the point where she didn't notice there was someone in her room. It was just that this was within her expectations. So many geniuses came looking for us, but their movements are too slow. Fu Yao smiled bitterly and said, "Why don't you say your illusory transformation technique is too brilliant? Even nascent soul cultivators have to be in the middle stage before they can discover the abnormality. Even those with weak divine senses can't do it." In fact, although Nie Wushang's illusory transformation technique was brilliant, it wasn't to this extent. The reason why Mo Tiange could use it so effectively was because she had the spirit-concealing pendant. Facing her strange magic weapons, Fu Yao could only sigh in admiration. But the person's cultivation level doesn't seem high. Mo Tiange muttered as she pushed the door open. There were only 2 cultivators in the room, one sitting and one standing. One was in the core formation realm and the other in the foundation building realm. They were actually acquaintances. Upon seeing her coming in, their gazes fell on her. Mo Tianga's eyes darted around and immediately saw a jade disc-shaped magic weapon in one of their hands. As it turned out, they were able to see through her illusion because they used their magic weapons. Fellow Daoist Qin, long time no see. Ling Yunhe stood up and politely clasped his hands to greet her. Mo Tianga showed a faint smile and withdrew her illusory transformation technique, revealing her original appearance. It's indeed been a long time. Every time I wanted to look for fellow Daoist Ling, I was always hindered by mundane affairs. In the blink of an eye, it's been more than 50 years since we last met. Fellow Daoist Ling, how are you? Thank you for your concern, fellow Daoist Qin. I'm fine. Ling Yunhe's eyes flashed. He looked at her and couldn't help but say, after so many years, fellow Daoist Qin's cultivation level has advanced so quickly. I really admire you. Fellow Daoist Ling isn't bad either. You're hindered by mundane affairs and you're involved in disputes, but you're still able to make such progress. It's really rare. Ling Yunhe forced a smile but didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a bit strange. In the past, although the two of them didn't have a deep friendship, they talked naturally. Today, however, it was a superficial smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mo Tianga didn't blame Ling Yunhe. She understood the current situation very well. No matter what kind of friendship she had with Ling Yunhe in the past, he was still the school head of Juyan sect. From his standpoint, he had to consider the interests of the sect, even if she had previously saved his life. If the Ling Yunhe in the past was a peer she could befriend, then the Ling Yunhe today was someone she had to deal with. Xiaoshun, you also came to One Leaf Island. We haven't seen each other for many years. How are you now? Upon hearing her greeting, Ling Yixuan hastily cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you for your concern, senior. Xiaoshun is very good. Mo Tianga smiled but didn't say anything. The three of them were silent for a while. Ling Yunhe finally said, Fellow Daoist Qin, I have to thank you for helping me with the matter in Carefree Valley. Mo Tianga waved her hand and said with a smile, Fellow Daoist Ling has already thanked me. There's no need to thank me again. Ling Yunhe was very serious. He took out a Qiankuan bag from his robe and handed it to her. I'm ashamed that I haven't fulfilled the reward I promised fellow Daoist Qin. I've kept these things with me for a long time. Today, I'll return them to you. Mo Tianga sighed, took the Qiankuan bag and said, Fellow Daoist Ling, you don't need to feel guilty. Our positions are different, so there's nothing we can do about it. Ling Yunhe's expression softened a little. How could he not understand this principle? If it were someone else, he wouldn't feel anything at all, but, fellow Daoist Qin? He called out with a sigh. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he swallowed his words. Then, his expression changed. He put on a gentle and refined smile like a mask and said, As long as you hand over the Fuxing sword, I can guarantee no one will harass you in the future. Chapter 445. Mo Tianga looked very calm and had a smile on her face. She didn't show any anger or helplessness from being threatened. This made Ling Yunhe feel he seemed to have missed something important, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought. Fellow Daoist Ling, Mo Tianga said, I'm sorry, but I can't do it. Ling Yunhe widened his eyes. Why? He thought she was a smart person and wouldn't refuse to hand over something she shouldn't covet, no matter how precious it was. Since she could hand over the inescapable net, why couldn't she hand over the Fuxing sword? He took a deep breath and advised her cautiously, Fellow Daoist Qin, you have to think about it carefully. You're alone, so how can you fight against so many nascent soul cultivators? If you hand it over, I can talk to the ancestors and give you some benefits to compensate for your loss. Mo Tianga smiled then heaved a sigh. This time, although she was standing on the opposite side of Ling Yunhe, he still remembered their old friendship, which moved her a bit. Fellow Daoist Ling, I can't hand it over because the Fuxing sword has recognized me as its master. Ling Yunhe stared at her for a long time before he found his voice again. Recognized you as its master? You've made the Fuxing sword recognize you as its master? Mo Tianga looked at him calmly. So, take me to see those seniors. I think they'll be very happy to see me. Asterisk 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 after Juyin sect, the nascent soul cultivators of Yu Mountain Academy and Huayan Temple also arrived. In addition to Scholar Yu, there were also several nascent soul cultivators from Yu Mountain Academy and Baifu Mountain. Of course, most of these nascent soul cultivators were in the early stage. After all, it wasn't easy to advance after the nascent soul realm. In terms of numbers, the three groups had about the same number of nascent soul cultivators, but in terms of cultivation level, Juyin sect was undoubtedly the first. In addition to Master Daoist Yuan Mu, there was also an iron-faced Daoist who was also in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. The others were all in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Realizing this, Scholar Yu and revered Wu Ming couldn't help but curse silently. That old man Yuan Mu was truly cunning. He had 2 late-stage cultivators and several mid-stage cultivators. On One Leaf Island, they were still the strongest faction, but they had left all their early-stage cultivators in the sect. If anything happened, they could preserve Juyin sect's chances of survival and prevent their foundations from being shaken. Unfortunately, even if they knew, they couldn't change anything. The Juyin sect dared to do this because they were powerful enough and had enough nascent soul cultivators. If it were them, if they left all the early-stage cultivators in the sect, they would not be able to bring many of them out. Mr. Yu, fellow Daoist Avidya, you finally arrived. Reverend Yuan Mu brought all the nascent soul cultivators out to welcome them. Scholar Yu and revered Wu Ming returned the greeting, and the 3 parties only entered after exchanging pleasantries. After all the cultivators had taken their seats and exchanged greetings, Scholar Yu went straight to the point. Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu, has the master of the Heavenly Devil Tower appeared? Yuan Mu Jinren said, there's news already, but we don't know his identity yet. That person sent a message saying that he will come as promised. That's good. Scholar Yu tapped the folding fan in his hand, looking rather pleased with himself. Revered Wu Ming smiled and said, Mr. Yu's foresight is truly marvelous. The matter regarding the Heavenly Devil Tower was indeed correct, but I wonder how's the Fuxing sword? Master Yuan Mu Jinren was about to shake his head when he suddenly sensed something with his divine sense. He frowned and said, we'll know in a moment. Standing outside the reception room of the Juyin sect's branch hall, Ling Yunhe took a deep breath then looked at Mo Tiange. Fellow Daoist Qin, please. Mo Tiange smiled. She didn't stand on ceremony and took the lead to enter. Staring at her back, Ling Yunhe's expression was complicated, but he also followed her inside. As soon as she entered the reception room, countless gazes fell on her. Among them were 4 late-stage nascent soul cultivators and about 10 middle-stage and early-stage cultivators. This was Mo Tiange's first time seeing so many nascent soul cultivators gathered in one place. These cultivators' powerful spiritual aura pressure enveloped her, either intentionally or unintentionally. If she was an ordinary core formation cultivator, under the gazes and spiritual aura pressure of so many nascent soul cultivators, she'd probably break out in a cold sweat and lose her will. However, she was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm and her soul-refining art was successful, so she wasn't afraid of the spiritual aura pressure of nascent soul cultivators. Of course, there were so many of them, and there were even quite a few late-stage nascent soul cultivators among them, so she still felt very uncomfortable. Celestial Pole Cultivator Mo Tiange greets seniors. She smiled and politely saluted everyone. Master Yuan Mu Jinren raised his eyebrows, and the others also looked surprised. Firstly, Mo Tiange's expression was so calm, as if she wasn't affected by the spiritual aura pressure at all. Secondly, the name she claimed wasn't Qin Wei, but Ling Yunhe's previous message said he'd brought Qin Wei back. Master Yuan Mu Jinren instantly regained his composure. No need to be so polite. Master Yuan Mu Jinren's gaze fell on Ling Yunhe, who also came in. He saw that Ling Yunhe also looked hesitant, but he still nodded at him. Master Yuan Mu Jinren now knew what was going on. He smiled at Mo Tiange and said, it seems this is little fellow Daoist's real origin and name. Since the other side was so friendly, Mo Tiange also smiled back. Yes, senior must be Senior Yuan Mu from Juyin sect? Master Yuan Mu Jinren nodded then pointed at Venerable Avidya on the side. This is Venerable Avidya from Huayan Temple. Little fellow Daoist should have met him before. Mo Tiange nodded, then saluted Venerable Avidya. Senior Avidya, long time no see. How have you been? Venerable Avidya still had the expression of a Maitreya Buddha. He put his palms together and saluted her. Thanks to little fellow Daoist, I've been living well. It's only been 10 years since we last met, but little fellow Daoist's cultivation level has advanced again. Congratulations. After they finished greeting each other, Master Yuanmu pointed at Scholar Yu on the side. This is Mr. Yu from Yu Mountain Academy. Mo Tiange couldn't help but find this young and refined teacher Yu somewhat similar to the young scholar she transformed into before. She couldn't help but feel interested, but she still politely saluted him. Greetings, Mr. Yu. Scholar Yu just nodded with a smile. He didn't return her salute, nor did he answer. For a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, this was already considered very polite. Venerable Avidya was an exception. He was a Buddhist cultivator, so the principles he upheld were much gentler. Moreover, Venerable Avidya had always been amiable, so he returned the salute. Master Yuanmu Jinren picked up his teacup and took a sip. He didn't introduce her to the other cultivators, nor did he ask her to sit down. Mo Tiange also understood that in the eyes of these nascent soul seniors, she was only a core formation junior. Even if they were kind to her, they still didn't deserve too much courtesy. Therefore, she didn't care and just stood there calmly, letting others size her up. In any case, she was accompanied by Ling Yunhe. Oh, there were also 2 core formation cultivators present, and they were both her acquaintances, Jiewu and Han Shizhi. Both of their cultivation levels had advanced, and their Jiewu had already advanced to the middle stage. Han Shizhi, like her, had also reached the peak stage. Wasn't it said that only nascent soul cultivators participated in the Sea of Returning Ruins this time? Ling Yunhe was the sect head of Juyan sect, so it was reasonable for him to come and handle the matter. She didn't know much about Han Shizhi, but what about Jiewu? She remembered that Venerable Avidya's eldest disciple was Ju Xin, and Jiewu wasn't even his disciple. Thinking up to this point, a thought flashed in her mind. Could it be that the 2 of them were the masters of the other 2 holy objects? Before she had time to think about it, Master Daoist Yunmu said, Little fellow Daoist, are you from the celestial pole? Mo Tiange's eyes brightened. Senior also knows about the celestial pole? Master Daoist Yunmu said slowly, I know a thing or two. He looked up and glanced at Mo Tiange meaningfully. Little fellow Daoist, you're only a core formation cultivator, but you actually came to Yunzhong from the celestial pole. You're not simple. Based on what he said, this Master Daoist Yuanmu also knew that the journey from Yunzhong to the celestial pole was difficult. Thinking about it, there were also many high-level cultivators in the celestial pole who knew about Yunzhong. It was just that the South Sea was difficult to cross, so they didn't know about Yunzhong. Junior was just lucky, that's all. Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't want to talk about this topic. In the next second, he stared at Mo Tiange with a fierce gaze, and his spiritual aura pressure rose sharply. I heard little fellow Daoist isn't willing to hand over the Fuxing sword? Under the deliberate spiritual aura pressure of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, Mo Tiange was shaken even though she had a secret technique. However, she quickly recovered and said calmly, correct. Now that things have come to this, even if Junior hands over the Fuxing sword, it'll be useless to seniors. Master Daoist Junmu withdrew his spiritual aura pressure and said faintly, Little fellow Daoist, please tell me. Upon seeing his expression, Mo Tiange thought in her heart that this Master Daoist Yuanmu was worthy of being the real head of Juyan sect. Since he already knew she wasn't willing to hand over the Fuxing sword, Ling Yunhe must have told him the reason, but he insisted on listening to her say it in person. In this way, her momentum was stolen and she was at a disadvantage. However, she didn't care. I won't hide it from Senior. Junior has already recognized the Fuxing sword as its master, so I can't give it to Senior, Mo Tiange said faintly. Once she said that, Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't react, but the others were shocked. Venerable Avidya even opened his eyes. Only then did Mo Tiange realize that this Venerable Avidya wasn't blind. Junior. Scholar Yu closed the folding fan in his hand and asked with a calm expression, that Fuxing sword actually recognized you as its master? Correct. Imotienga stared at this late-stage nascent soul cultivator and said, Junior not only recognized the Fuxing sword as its master, but I also obtained Senior Fu Yaozi's inheritance. Upon hearing this, the expression of Master Daoist Yuanmu, who had always been very calm, changed greatly. He glared at her and said, You obtained Fu Yaozi's inheritance? He said this very loudly. He indeed had the demeanor of a cultivator who had lost his vitality. But no one cared about it now because everyone's reaction was the same as Master Daoist Yuanmu's. Imotienga, on the other hand, was in a very good mood. She ignored the many nascent soul cultivators' ugly expressions and said with a smile, Correct. Speaking of which, Senior Fu Yaozi is worthy of being the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong. His divine sense has been sealed for several tens of thousands of years, but it actually still exists for so long. In the past few years, Junior obtained Senior Fu Yaozi's pointers and gained a lot. Clang! Imotienga keenly heard a light noise. Right after that, a nascent soul cultivator abruptly stood up with a magic weapon in his hand and shouted, Senior Martial Brother Yumu, why are you being polite to this junior? Does she, a mere core formation cultivator, want to take a share of our fated chances? I'd like to see what she can do if she loses her life. Impudent! Master Daoist Yuanmu shouted, glaring at that Juyin sect cultivator. Do you think you can casually recognize a 5 Saints item as its master? The nascent soul cultivator was stunned after being reprimanded. If we kill her, won't the Fuxing sword become a masterless item again? Idiot! Master Daoist Yuanmu couldn't care less about the fact that there were outsiders in front of him. He glared fiercely at that person and said, Sit down. The nascent soul cultivator reluctantly sat down, but his ferocious gaze was still fixed on Imotienga. Imotienga, on the other hand, just smiled, looking completely unaffected. Hee. While the others were furious, revered Wu Ming laughed and said, It seems little fellow Daoist came prepared, but I wonder if you have enough bargaining chips? Imotienga's gaze wandered as she asked with a smile, The method to open the mysterious space, the specific path, the key points to pay attention to, and even the method to obtain the immortal fate. I wonder if that's enough. Chapter 446. After a long time, Master Daoist Yuanmu took a deep breath and stared at Imotienga seriously. Junior, other holy objects also have owners, and you're not the only one who knows how to open the mysterious space. As for the method to obtain the immortal fate you mentioned. He paused, and a hint of killing intent appeared on his originally kind and amiable face. As long as I search your soul and turn you into a puppet, it won't affect the Fuxing sword's recognition of its master. Imotienga was still smiling and didn't even blink. Junior doesn't dare to say that Senior is wrong, but what Senior wants to know, even if you search my soul, it'll be useless. Master Daoist Yuanmu stared at her. Imotienga didn't say anything and looked calm. In the next moment, the expressions of several nascent soul cultivators suddenly changed. There was a strong fluctuation of divine sense in the air. Scholar Yu held his folding fan and frowned. This divine sense, with his cultivation level in the late stage of the nascent soul realm, it wasn't difficult for him to feel that this divine sense wasn't complete, but the hidden power of wind and thunder was something even he couldn't ignore. This divine sense appeared in a flash and then slowly disappeared into the sword on Imotienga's back. Seniors, this is Junior's real bargaining chip. Imotienga cupped her hands at the crowd and said slowly. Maybe it was because her attitude was respectful, at least to save face for these nascent soul cultivators, or maybe it was because her bargaining chip was so amazing that they had to consider compromising. In the end, these nascent soul cultivators didn't say anything. Even the irascible cultivators who clamored to kill Imotienga were silent. Master Daoist Yuanmu looked to the side. Revered Wu Ming was still smiling with his eyes closed, seemingly not ready to express his opinion. Scholar Yu looked gloomy, but in the end he sighed silently. Master Daoist Junmu withdrew his gaze and finally said, "Little fellow Daoist, what do you want? Please speak frankly." His voice was very calm, as if he had accepted this result. Fu Yaozi, the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, was unrivaled for more than 100,000 years. His existence was already a legend. Even though he only had a trace of divine sense left, even though these people were already in the late stage of the nascent soul realm, they were still afraid of his prestige. Mo Tiange wasn't surprised by this result. She was just a nobody, but her master, Fu Yaozi, was a big shot. "Junior only wants what she deserves," she said calmly. "The share you deserve?" Immortal Yuanmu stared at her. "Little fellow Daoist, please speak clearly." Mo Tiange showed a faint smile and said with a modest expression, "In short, it's equal opportunities." But the next moment, blue veins appeared on Reverend Yuanmu's forehead. He took a deep breath and rubbed his forehead. After cultivating to the late stage of the nascent soul stage, his state of mind should have been calm and tranquil. However, today he was repeatedly angered by a core formation cultivator. "What right do you have to have an equal opportunity?" The one who spoke was Scholar Yu. He stared coldly at Mo Tiange. "Even if you have Senior Fu Yao's divine sense protecting you, you're still just a core formation cultivator. Even if we agreed, would you dare to believe us?" As long as they found the immortal fate, they could casually wave their hands and this junior would be reduced to ashes. They were two completely different sides, yet they wanted to have an equal chance? With the Fuxing sword in Junior's hand, Mo Tiange said faintly. She didn't care about Scholar Yu's attitude at all. These late-stage nascent soul cultivators were used to being high and mighty. How could they tolerate others taking a share from their hands? Especially since she was just a core formation cultivator. In their eyes, she was just a little better than an ant. "Little fellow Daoist." Master Daoist Yuanmu stared at her with a profound gaze, but his tone was flat. "I'll give you one more chance. If you obediently listen to me now, after we enter that mysterious space, I'll guarantee your safety and even accept you as my disciple. What do you think?" Mo Tiange just smiled. Junior appreciates Senior's good intentions. He took another step back, but was once again rejected. Enlightened Master Yuanmu's expression darkened, and his voice deepened. "Don't you think your appetite is too big?" Mo Tiange said, "5 sacred objects, 1 for each of us. If Junior's appetite is really too big, what I want isn't an equal opportunity, but a 5th. After we enter that secret place, with Senior's abilities, you'll naturally obtain more things than Junior. Why do you want Junior to become a puppet and wait for Senior's alms?" In the silence, Venerable Wu Ming finally spoke. Among the many nascent soul cultivators present, this late-stage nascent soul cultivator was the calmest. He still said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu, Mr. Yu, why don't we let this little fellow Daoist rest first? This matter can't be rushed." Mo Tiange's trump card had been revealed, and she had also put forward her request. What was left was how they would deal with her, so it was useless to keep her here. Master Daoist Yuanmu thought for a while. Seeing that no one had any objections, he said, "Yun, take this little fellow Daoist to rest." He didn't say anything polite to Mo Tiange and didn't even glance at her. He was probably furious. Ling Yunhe answered respectfully, "Yes, martial uncle." Then he cupped his hands towards Mo Tiange. "Qin. Oh, fellow Daoist Mo, please." Mo Tiange smiled and followed him out of the parlor. After walking with Ling Yunhe for a while, she finally heard him say, "Fellow Daoist, you're really brave. You're not afraid at all in front of so many seniors." Mo Tiange just smiled. "I have no other choice." Ling Yunhe was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "Fellow Daoist Qin, do you not trust me?" Mo Tiange was puzzled. "What do you mean, fellow Daoist Ling?" Ling Yunhe frowned and said, "Although I'm only a core formation cultivator, I can still guarantee fellow Daoist Qin's safety." Mo Tiange was stunned. After thinking about it, she realized he misunderstood. He thought she didn't trust his guarantee and wanted to deal with the nascent soul cultivators to fight for a chance of survival. She shook her head and said, "Fellow Daoist Ling, you don't need to think too much. I wasn't trying to be fierce just now, and what I said wasn't false. Really? Seeing how calm she looked, Ling Yunhe couldn't help but believe her. Was that really Senior Fu Yaozi? Mo Tiange just smiled and didn't answer. Instead, she asked about something else. Fellow Daoist Ling, I heard Jian Sek's sacred object is the soul restraining bead. Is it the soul restraining bead we saw in Carefree Valley that year? No, Ling Yunhe said. The soul restraining bead I had back then was an imitation refined by one of my Ling clan's ancestors based on the real soul restraining bead. However, its appearance and divine power are almost the same. Oh! No wonder Ling Yunhe could also obtain the soul restraining bead back then. It turned out it wasn't the real one. Then, is fellow Daoist Ling the person chosen by the real soul restraining bead as its master? When Ling Yunhe heard this, he stopped in his tracks and turned to look at her. Mo Tiange smiled. I'm just guessing. If it's inconvenient, fellow Daoist Ling doesn't need to answer. Ling Yunhe turned back and continued to lead the way. Fellow Daoist Qin's guess is correct. The person chosen by the soul restraining bead is indeed me. Oh. Mo Tiange nodded. Then the people chosen by the inescapable net and nameless list are Jiewu and Han Shizhi? Ling Yunhe smiled. Correct. Otherwise, how could core formation cultivators like us participate in such a grand meeting? Mo Tiange furrowed her brows and thought to herself, the three of them, plus me, are all in the core formation realm. She suddenly had an idea. She used her divine sense to communicate with Fu Yaozi. Master, is there some secret behind this? He, Fu Yaozi's voice rang in her mind. The Fuxing sword recognizing you as its master was a coincidence, and it had little to do with your cultivation level. However, I think the reason why there are only 3 core formation cultivators is because the power of the key isn't enough. Huh? Didn't I already tell you? Their divine sense secret technique isn't as good as mine. Presumably, after being sealed for so many years, their divine senses have gradually faded. If the power of the chosen nascent soul cultivators isn't enough, they can only choose core formation cultivators. So, the other holy artifacts can choose whoever they want to recognize as their master. Then they can also change people at will? It's not that simple, Fu Yaozi said. Although the conditions for them to recognize a master aren't as strict as mine, they aren't that casual either. Moreover, because their divine sense secret technique isn't strong enough, their holy artifacts can only recognize a master once, so I'm certain they don't dare to take risks. Mo Tiange understood a little. In short, this master of hers was too scheming. Master, your Fuxing sword needs people with spiritual roots of the origin to recognize it as its master. Spiritual roots of the origin rarely appear in 1,000 years, and because the 4 of them aren't strong enough, they can only recognize a master once. Isn't it too difficult to gather 5 people who can be recognized by the holy artifacts at the same time? Fu Yaozi chuckled. Even if we can't gather all 5, so what? The reason I played these tricks was because I wanted to leave behind an inheritance for myself. Even if the mysterious space in the Sea of Returning Ruins never opens again, what does it have to do with us? Mo Tiange secretly wiped her sweat. In any case, he was only a wisp of divine sense now, and his true body had long advanced to the deification realm, so it really didn't have anything to do with him. As for the other 4 saints, she didn't know where they went. It was nothing more than leaving a fated chance for the younger generation. If they couldn't obtain it in the end, they probably wouldn't care. However, the living nascent soul cultivators certainly wouldn't care. In the living room, the nascent soul cultivators were silent, and all of them had ugly expressions on their faces. After a long time, Ling Xiu asked, Senior Martial Brother Yumu, is there really no other way? Although Senior Fu Yaozi is the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, he's still a person from 100,000 years ago, and now he only has a bit of divine sense left. Master Daoist Yuanmu held his teacup and didn't move for a long time. At that moment, he sighed and said, How could it be that simple? Only now do I realize that Fu Yaozi is really much stronger than the founder. Someone was confused. What does Brother Daoist Yuanmu mean? His Fuxing sword is a holy artifact, But we also have holy artifacts in our hands. Can't we fight against him? Scholar Yu tapped the folding fan in his hand and said, "Our three groups have chosen to cooperate. Everyone present is the elite of our three groups. Fellow Daoist Junmu, fellow Daoist Avidya, why don't we speak frankly?" Master Daoist Avidya nodded with a smile. "Fellow Daoists, you can decide. This old monk has no objections." Master Daoist Yuanmu also nodded after thinking for a while. He put down his teacup and glanced at the nascent soul cultivators present. "Since that's the case, I'll explain it clearly to everyone." He paused for a moment and said, "You probably don't know this, but holy artifacts can only recognize a master once. After that, the divine sense on it will dissipate. Unless the new master also reaches the same cultivation level as senior 5 sages and seals the holy artifact again, the holy artifact will be no different from an ordinary magic treasure." Exclamations sounded in the guest hall. This was a secret of the 3 sects, and not all nascent soul cultivators knew about it. Someone shouted, "Senior Martial Brother Yumu, so you're saying that we must find all 5 holy artifacts and make them recognize us as masters before the person who recognizes us dies?" Master Daoist Yuanmu shook his head. "Our holy artifacts haven't recognized us as masters yet." He frowned. "I've discussed with fellow Daoist Yuan Ming and Mr. Yu before. Before we confirm that all the holy artifacts can recognize us as masters, we won't let them recognize us as masters. Otherwise, once a holy artifact fails to recognize us as its master, the secret of the returning ruins sea will be sealed forever." Ling Xiu came to his senses. "So, this junior has already made the supporting life sword recognize us as its master, and we're unable to find another master for the supporting life sword?" "That's right. This is the reason why the 3 of us have our hands tied." Scholar Yu's expression was gloomy. If this junior didn't know this, how could she be so arrogant? Soul-searching and making her into a puppet were just methods to scare her. After she was made into a puppet, they weren't sure if the holy artifacts would still be as effective as before. And they wouldn't even consider giving up on such a fortuitous encounter. "Furthermore, we're now faced with another problem," revered Master Wu Ming said with a smile. "We still can't be sure if the Heavenly Demon Tower has someone who can recognize us as its master." After a moment of silence, someone gritted his teeth. "If the secret land of the returning ruins sea can never be opened because of this junior, I'll definitely crush her bones and scatter her ashes." Chapter 447. Fellow Daoist Qin, Ling Yunhe called from outside, "We can go now." Mo Tiange stopped cultivating and came out of the virtual sky world. This Ling Yunhe already knew her real name, but he stubbornly called her Fellow Daoist Qin, saying he was used to it and didn't want to change it. She shook her head, put away the restrictions in the room, and walked out of the door. Ling Yunhe was actually a good person. If it weren't for their positions, they could be friends, but it was unlikely for now. She made up her mind to return to the celestial pole as soon as this matter was over. Unless her strength increased greatly in the future, she would never set foot in Yunzhong again. After offending so many nascent soul cultivators, it was better to stay away from them. However, she didn't think she was greedy. What she wanted was nothing more than a chance to enter the mysterious space of the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for fated chances. As for these nascent soul cultivators, as long as she obediently played the role of a key, they might just kill her with a wave of their hands after she lost her usefulness. As for what Master Daoist Yuanmu said about accepting her as a disciple, not to mention that she had a master, even if she really entered Juyan's sect, they wouldn't train her like they did with Ling Yunhe. They would most likely give her some random things to send her away. Besides, she had the virtual sky world, so how could ordinary treasures be rare? Fated chances were the only thing she wanted. Fated chances? It was this word that thoroughly offended these nascent soul cultivators. Fated chances weren't endless. She had the Fusheng sword, so her chances of getting fated chances were greater than others. If she got the key fated chances, others wouldn't. But why should she give up the chance she got? Although she didn't have enough cultivation level, unfortunately, she had the Fusheng sword that they didn't have. Fellow Daoist Ling, don't we have to wait anymore? Ling Yunhe said, there's news about the demonic tower, so there's no need to wait. The seniors have announced the time, so those nascent soul cultivators will naturally rush to the secret place before it opens. Mo Tiange nodded to show she understood. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by, so she naturally didn't want to miss it. Following Ling Yunhe, she met those nascent soul cultivators again. After a few days, these nascent soul cultivators had calmed down. Their gazes towards her were no longer angry, but very cold. Seeing her coming, Master Daoist Junmu said, "Okay, let's go." The other cultivators responded one after another, each using their own means and stepping on their flying treasures. Ling Yunhe, Han Shizhi, and Zhu Wu were brought along by their respective masters. Seeing as no one was paying attention to her, Mo Tiange also waved her sleeves. A cloud appeared under her feet as she activated her cloud-treading boots. All the nascent soul cultivators rose into the sky, turned into rays of light, and flew far away. One Leaf Island was just a small island. Almost all the cultivators were alarmed by the commotion. Most of the cultivators above the nascent soul realm had already received the news and left a long time ago. As for the core formation cultivators, they were both envious and jealous. Only a few of the bolder ones looked in the direction the light disappeared in and quietly followed it. Unfortunately, their efforts were futile. With the speed of a nascent soul cultivator, how could they keep up? Right now, Mo Tiange was using her cloud-treading boots with all her strength. She even took out the land-shrinking ruler to increase her speed. However, it was still too difficult to keep up with these nascent soul cultivators. If it weren't for the fact that they hadn't used their full strength, she would have been left behind long ago. Mo Tiange smiled bitterly in her heart. Why were these nascent soul cultivators so narrow-minded? They'd obviously agreed to her conditions, but they still had to watch her embarrass herself. In fact, these nascent soul cultivators were secretly surprised to see her barely keeping up with the group. Some of them even thought that since this female cultivator dared to discuss conditions with them, nascent soul cultivators, she really had some skills. They also remembered that her cultivation level was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm. As long as she had a fated chance, she could enter the nascent soul realm. At that time, she would be on the same level as them. With that in mind, those early-stage nascent soul cultivators no longer looked down on her. Mo Tiange had a hard time keeping up with them. The result of using all her strength was that her spiritual aura was draining too fast. She had no choice but to keep a high-grade restorative panacea in her mouth at all times. Despite that, she was still slowly being left behind. After flying for a while, revered Avidya suddenly said, "Little fellow Daoist, let this old monk lend you a hand." As he said that, he waved his kasaya. A strong aura suddenly approached Mo Tiange and swept her over. In an instant, she was standing on revered Avidya's lotus throne. Mo Tiange heaved a sigh of relief, then cupped her hands to express her gratitude. "Thank you for your help, senior." Revered Avidya smiled and said no more. He continued to fly forward on his lotus throne. Among these nascent soul cultivators, revered Avidya treated her quite well. More than 10 years ago, when he asked her to return the inescapable net, he didn't make things difficult for her. This time, when other cultivators made things difficult for her, he once again extended a helping hand. She secretly rejoiced that she returned the inescapable net so straightforwardly. It was probably because of this that this revered Avidya had a slight favorable impression of her. "Benefactor Mo, are you all right?" A voice entered her ears. Mo Tiange turned around and saw that it was Zhu Wu, who was also standing behind revered Avidya. This Zhu Wu was tall, had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and looked very sturdy. However, he also looked honest and sincere. Right now, he turned his head to ask her. His expression was full of concern and didn't seem fake. Mo Tiange wiped the sweat on her forehead, then answered with a smile, "Thank you for your concern, fellow Daoist. I'm just a little tired." Zhu Wu also smiled at her but still put his palms together and obediently stood behind revered Avidya. A hint of confusion flashed in Mo Tiange's eyes. Back then, when she met Ju Wu in Sky Snow City, he was driven out. He was very down and out, and he even robbed other cultivators with his junior martial brother. Although he kept some commandments in mind, what he did was really a bit. Moreover, when she killed his junior martial brother out of anger, he was very sad. Why didn't he blame her at all and even cared about her now? Sensing her gaze from time to time, Ju Wu turned around and smiled at her. "Benefactor Mo, is there something wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Since she was discovered, Mo Tiange bluntly said, "Fellow Daoist Ju Wu, please don't blame me. I just feel that you're very different from when we first met, so, I see." Ju Wu still had a humble smile on his face as he said, "What happened back then was because of this poor monk's mistake. Ever since I was brought back to Mount Baifu by senior martial brother Ju Exin, this poor monk has cut off all ties with the past." "Is that so? Could it be that he doesn't even care about killing his junior martial brother?" "Little fellow Daoist," revered Avidya suddenly said, "Ju Wu cultivates Zen." Mo Tiange was stunned. "He cultivates Zen? What does that mean?" But Ju Wu just smiled at her. He still stood there with his head lowered and didn't say anything. In the next few days, everyone focused on hurrying on their journey. During this journey, Mo Tiange saw numerous sea beasts in the sea of returning ruins. Their numbers ranged from the 5th rank to the 7th rank. There were even some 8th rank sea beasts once in a while. Fortunately, with so many nascent soul cultivators here, those sea beasts sensed their powerful momentum and flew far away before they could get close. Their journey was almost smooth sailing, and they soon arrived at their destination. Several days later, the group of nascent soul cultivators stopped in the sky above an isolated island in the sea. Looking at the island surrounded by clouds and mist under their feet, someone asked doubtfully, "Senior martial brother Yunmu, is this the place?" Mo Tiange also had doubts in her heart. The island under their feet was a bit bigger than One Leaf Island, but it was bare and looked like a stone mountain without the slightest bit of spiritual aura. Of course. Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't explain and directly landed on the island. The others also followed him and landed one after another. There were already other cultivators waiting on the island. When they saw the cultivators from the 3 groups, they hurriedly went up to greet them. Mo Tiange glanced at them. Most of these cultivators were in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. They didn't look like they were from any big forces, so they could basically be regarded as extras. The biggest benefits would naturally be divided among the few biggest forces. As for these people, it would depend on their own fated chances. Mo Tiange thanked Venerable Avidya, then casually found a quiet corner and sat down cross-legged. In the following day, more and more nascent soul cultivators arrived, and their cultivation levels were also getting higher and higher. "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu, fellow Daoist Avidya, Mr. Yu, you 3 came really early." Sensing another powerful spiritual aura approaching, Mo Tiange opened her eyes and saw another late-stage nascent soul cultivator descending with several disciples. This late-stage nascent soul cultivator looked like a skinny old man. He wore a tattered Daoist robe and held a horsetail whisk, but his voice was full of energy. "So it's fellow Daoist Gua." Master Daoist Yuanmu greeted him with a smile. "This is Daoist Gua from Pufa School." Ling Yunha came to her side and said softly, "Daoist Gua looks unremarkable, but his diamond body refining technique is very good. There are very few people in Yunzhong who can break his body protecting technique." Mo Tiange nodded, indicating she understood. She then turned to Ling Yunha and smiled. "Thank you for telling me, fellow Daoist Ling, you're still hanging out with me. Aren't you afraid of the sect's elders getting angry?" Ling Yunha laughed. "Martial uncles and martial uncles don't care about this. They don't like fellow Daoist Qin because you show off too much and don't give them any face." "Oh," Mo Tiange answered softly. It turned out her attitude was too tough, which made these nascent soul seniors unhappy. Speaking of which, these nascent soul seniors were really narrow-minded. "Fellow Daoist Qin, we've known each other for many years, so I have to remind you. Although you have the Fuxing sword and Senior Fu Yaozi's help, you still have to be careful on this trip. After all, there are too many nascent soul seniors who came this time, and many of them are hot-tempered. Fellow Daoist Qin, you'd better restrain yourself. Hearing Ling Yunhe's advice, Mo Tiange smiled and thanked him sincerely. Thank you, fellow Daoist Ling. I understand. Seeing that she listened to his advice, Ling Yunhe smiled and seemed to be relieved. By the way, fellow Daoist Ling, did the master of the Heavenly Devil Tower also find a master? Ling Yunhe nodded. Yes. If not, how could he let us make the sacred objects recognize him as master? Mo Tiange thought about it and agreed. They were the ones who paid the most attention to the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins. Since they came here, they must have confirmed that the 5 sacred objects recognized them as masters and could open the space. Who got the Heavenly Devil Tower? This question made Ling Yunhe hesitate for a moment. In the end, he said, fellow Daoist Qin will know soon. Chapter 448. Fellow Daoists, you're early. Another late-stage nascent realm cultivator arrived. Before he landed, he already greeted everyone with a loud voice. Mo Tiange looked up. This person had a bald head, a ring scar, a fat head, big ears, and a ferocious face. Even though he was wearing a kasaya, he still looked like a ruffian. This is Taolin Temple's venerable Xuxiang, Ling Yunhe explained to her. He cultivates the tiger taming technique, which is different from venerable avidyas. Mo Tiange nodded to show she understood. She knew that there was more than one Buddhist sect. Judging from Reverend Nameless actions, he should be from a relatively gentle and disciplined sect. This Reverend Void aspect, on the other hand, was much more laid back. This venerable Xuxiang has a strong momentum. His tiger taming technique should be famous for its tyranny, right? Yes, Ling Yunhe praised. Ling Yunhe praised, if Daoist Gua is the hardest tortoise shell, then venerable Xuxiang is the sharpest stone. Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh at this comparison. The next moment, she noticed the late-stage nascent realm cultivators were looking at them, so she quickly stopped laughing. Venerable Xuxiang scratched his head and asked, Old Yunmu, is this a disciple of your sect? Master Yunmu cast him a sidelong glance and said stiffly, Why do you care? I know this boy. He's from the Ling clan. The one next to him isn't wearing Zhuoyan sect's clothes. Is she his wife? Mo Tiange didn't care, but Ling Yunhe said hurriedly, Senior Xuxiang, please don't misunderstand. Psst. Fellow Daoist Mo, the person Fuxing's sword recognized as its master. Venerable Xuxiang was surprised and laughed. Little girl, you're not bad. Mo Tiange could only smile and clasp her hands towards Venerable Xuxiang to show her respect. Venerable Xuxiang waved at her and turned back to continue talking with the late-stage nascent realm cultivators. After a while, a strong devil aura fluctuation came from the sky. Mo Tiange was shocked when she looked up. This person was obviously a devil cultivator. Judging from his momentum, he was probably a late-stage nascent realm cultivator. This person was covered in a cloak and looked like a devil cultivator. Behind him were 2 tall refined corpses. They were both in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. This is Yu Ying City Lord, Yu Ying Demon Lord. Ling Yunhe said, among the 3 great demon monarchs of the diabolism, Demon Monarch Yu Ying is the most mysterious. No one has ever seen what he looks like, and the 2 refined corpses beside him are also famous. Ordinary nascent soul cultivators are no match for them. In terms of strength, even our sect's Uncle Master Yuan Mu might not be able to defeat him. Late nascent soul cultivation level, and 2 refined corpses in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. Mo Tiange said with a sigh, aren't they 3 people in one? Ling Yunhe smiled. Isn't that so? However, refined corpses are also very difficult to refine. It's not much easier than feeding spirit beasts. Being able to cultivate a refined corpse to the nascent soul stage is also a form of strength. It has been many years since we last met. Fellow Yu Ying's cultivation has improved again. Seeing Yu Ying City Lord, Venerable Su Xiang said in a strange tone. It was a pity that Moon Shadow City Lord ignored him and merely greeted perfected Yuan Mu and the rest. After another half a day, many cultivators came to the small island one after another, but the late-stage nascent soul cultivators were nowhere to be seen. Mo Tiange couldn't help but ask, "Fellow Daoist Ling, there are more cultivators in the late stage of Yunzhong, right?" Ling Yunhe pondered for a while and said, "There are still 4 people who haven't arrived. They should arrive before the space opens." "But which 4? 2 of them are naturally the other 2 demon monarchs," Ling Yunhe said. "The 3 demon monarchs are all in the late stage. Only Yu Ying City Lord is here. There's also progenitor Miaoying from Jingshu School. She seems to have some matters to deal with, and she even sent a letter to my uncle Master Yuan Mu. The last one is an individual cultivator. There are 2 other demon monarchs." Mo Tiange frowned. "Is the heavenly devil tower with one of them?" As she spoke, a strong wave of devil aura came from the sky again. It was even stronger than when Yu Ying arrived. Mo Tiange looked up. Sure enough, a group of devil cultivators had arrived, and among them were 2 in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. Gefang Demon Monarch, Night Frost Demon Monarch, they actually came together. Ling Yunhe murmured. Mo Tiange knew Gefang Demon Monarch, and Night Frost Demon Monarch was actually a very young woman with a cold face. Although her face was as cold as frost, she was as beautiful as a peach. She wore a dark purple robe that wrapped tightly around her body, giving her a different kind of charm. Mo Tiange was secretly surprised. She knew Night Frost Demon Monarch was the lord of Night Owl City. Among the 3 devil domains of the Devil Path, Night Owl City was the most overbearing and ruthless one. Any cultivator who offended Night Owl City would be avenged. For example, in Starfall City, the Lord's mansion was slaughtered in one night, and no one survived except for Lord Mei. She really didn't expect that the lord of such an overbearing Night Owl City was actually a woman. Then, her gaze was attracted by a person in the queue. Yang Qingji. His cultivation level was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, but he was in the middle of a group of nascent soul cultivators, following Guifang Demon Monarch closely. Could it be him? Among the core formation cultivators present, there were only Ju Wu, Han Shizhi, Ling Yunhe, and her. The 4 of them were all people who had been recognized by the holy objects. During this period of time, only nascent soul cultivators came. There were no core formation cultivators, but Yang Qingji was clearly only a core formation cultivator, yet he was in the queue. "Fellow Daoist Gefang, fellow Daoist Night Frost, you 2 finally came." Master Daoist Yuan Mu and the others went to greet them. That Night Frost Demon Monarch only cupped his hands at everyone and didn't even say a word. He just stood to the side with a cold expression. The others obviously knew this Night Frost Demon Monarch's personality, so they didn't care. Master Daoist Yuan Mu still said to Gefang Demon Monarch enthusiastically, "Fellow Daoist Gefang finally came. Did everything go smoothly?" Gefang Demon Monarch nodded expressionlessly and answered, "Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu doesn't need to worry." On the side, Scholar Yu smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Gefang really hit it well. If we hadn't gathered the other 4 holy objects, no one would have known Heavenly Devil Tower had actually fallen into fellow Daoist Guifang's hands." "Isn't that so?" Once Scholar Yu finished speaking, Venerable Xu Xiang immediately let out a strange cry. Back then, fellow Daoist Guifang really deceived us miserably in returning Ruin Sea. He even said it was because of our Buddhist school that fellow Daoist lost Heavenly Devil Tower. As it turns out, fellow Daoist was just bluffing. The sarcasm in Venerable Xu Xiang's words was very strong. When Gefang Demon Monarch heard what he said, the muscles on his face twitched, but he only let out a humph and didn't argue with him. Hearing up to this point, Mo Tiange was already certain that the person Heavenly Devil Tower recognized as its master was Yang Qingji. This Gefang Demon Monarch was really scheming. Back then, he became enemies with Buddhist school because of the Heavenly Devil Tower. When Venerable Avidya went to Guifang City, he even acted like he wouldn't stop until one of them died, but in the end, he secretly took Heavenly Devil Tower for himself. Others only knew he hated Buddhist school to the extreme, but they didn't know that was just a smokescreen. Her gaze once again fell on Yang Qingji. At that moment, Yang Qingji also noticed her. After a moment of hesitation, he raised his hand towards her. Imotienga smiled and returned his salute. What a coincidence! She actually knew all the people the other holy objects recognized as their masters. She and Ling Yunhe had some friendship, and Yang Qingji could be considered an old acquaintance. As for Jie, she still couldn't tell whether he really didn't hold a grudge or not, but Han Shizhi clearly had a grudge against her. Although Ling Yunhe promised to mediate for her in the past, there were old grudges between them. If there was a conflict of interest, Han Shizhi would definitely harm her. Imotienga sighed inwardly. She really had to be careful in this matter. Even if she had the Fusheng sword and those people didn't dare to do anything to her, she was still at a disadvantage. If only her master and senior martial brother were here. Just as she was thinking, another person flew towards the island. This person's cultivation level was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, but the aura around his body was extremely strong. Imotienga even thought her senses were wrong. However, this person's aura clearly lacked something. It couldn't compare to the late stage of the nascent soul realm. As this person flew closer and closer and landed on the island, Imotienga's expression suddenly changed. This person was shrouded in black clouds. Whether it was the appearance or the aura of the black clouds, they reminded her of one person, Master Song Feng. This person naturally couldn't be Master Song Feng, but his appearance was exactly the same as Master Song Feng's. If this person wasn't a male cultivator, Imotienga almost guessed it was Nie Wushang. Primordial Devil Aura, she said in a low voice. This person cultivated Primordial Devil Aura. Could it be that there was a sacrificial temple in the clouds? It's you. Before Imotienga could figure out what was going on, the cold-faced woman, Devil Monarch Yi Shuang, already spoke. She stared coldly at the new devil cultivator, waved her sleeve, and the ribbon on her purple robe fluttered. All of a sudden, her aura was astonishing. Mei Feng, how dare you? You escaped from me back then, and now you still dare to bump into me today. Mei Feng. Imotienga was taken aback. It was actually Castellan Mei of Starfall City back then? He escaped with his life, and in the past few decades, he actually advanced to the middle stage? The sharp voice of a teenager came from the black clouds. Castellan Yi, why are you so ruthless? Back then, I accidentally offended your disciple, and you've already completely destroyed the foundation of my Starfall City. All these years, I haven't caused trouble for your Nighthawk City, so this matter can be considered even, right? Easy for you to say. Devil Monarch Yi Shuang said coldly, your small Starfall City is also worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as my disciple? Take your life to make amends first. Right after he finished speaking, his devil aura suddenly rose and heavily pressed down. The early-stage nascent soul cultivators on the island with slightly lower cultivation levels were shaken, while the 5 core formation cultivators, including Imotienga, couldn't help but sway. Seeing this, revered Wu Ming flicked his kasaya, and an invisible aura protected the juniors. He put his palms together and said, Amitba. Fellow Daoist Yi Shuang, if you want to have a private fight, please don't hurt the innocent. Devil Monarch Yi Shuang swept his gaze over and withdrew his devil aura, but his eyes were still fixed on Mei Feng. Mei Feng laughed and said, Castellan Yi, although you're stronger than me, I'm no longer the Mei Feng of the past. It won't be easy to capture me. Today, we both came for the fated chance of the 5 saints of the returning ruined sea. Compared to the soul formation realm, this little grudge is nothing. If we can't reconcile, let's fight after we come out, okay? Devil Monarch Yi Shuang stared at him coldly for a while, then snorted and waved his sleeve. The purple satin belt was still wrapped around her body, but he looked away, no longer looking at him. The crisis was over. Mei Feng landed on the island, and the primordial devil aura on him faded a little. Although he was already in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, there were 8 or 9 late-stage cultivators on the island, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Moreover, he didn't have many friends in the past, so he just wanted to find a quiet place to stay low-key and wait. However, when he turned around, he saw Imotienga sitting cross-legged in the corner. It's you! He was shocked and angry. Mo Tiange sighed helplessly. Castellan Mei, long time no see. Mei Feng gnashed his teeth and looked at her. Old and new grudges surged up. The primordial devil he painstakingly cultivated was swallowed by someone else. The Starfall city he painstakingly built for many years was destroyed, and he fled in panic like a stray dog. He didn't really hate Devil Monarch Yishuang because she was strong and he accidentally offended her. However, he hated Mo Tiange to the bone. If it weren't for this junior, his primordial devil wouldn't have been eaten by someone else. If it weren't for his failure on the verge of success, his Starfall city wouldn't have been exterminated. If it weren't for offending Devil Monarch Yishuang, he wouldn't have had to hide for dozens of years. His actions were faster than his thoughts. He raised his arm and a gust of primordial devil aura shot towards Mo Tiange. Chapter 449. The nascent soul cultivators didn't expect that Mei Feng would suddenly attack Mo Tiange. Mo Tiange chose a relatively remote corner with only Ling Yunhe by her side. In the blink of an eye, the primordial devil aura had reached Mo Tiange's face. Whoosh! Mo Tiange opened the heaven and earth fan and blocked in front of her. At the same time, the art of primordial devil aura and the white silk handkerchief turned into mist and surrounded her body. Even so, Mo Tiange was still sent flying in the next moment. Fortunately, after several years of training by Fu Yaozi, her strength had increased greatly, so she could withstand the hasty attack of a nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, almost all of her magic treasures had the effect of restraining devil qi, so even though she was repelled, she didn't suffer too serious injuries. Mei Feng immediately chased after her aggressively. I'll grind your bones and scatter your ashes to vent my hatred. Fellow Daoist Mei. Master Daoist Yuanmu shouted but didn't stop her. He saw Mo Tiange's means just now. This junior was indeed skilled. At least, she could resist for a few breaths. He had been angered by Mo Tiange several times before, so he decided to save her after she suffered a bit. With his cultivation level, he could save her before she died. Mo Tiange didn't have much time to think. She tiptoed and soared into the air. Light flashed in her hands and several high-level talismans were slapped on her body without hesitation. Finally, she opened the lotus umbrella to block the remaining devil aura. Mei Feng was furious to see her escape from his hands. He snorted coldly and clenched his hands. More and more primordial devil aura gathered between his palms and became as black as ink. When the primordial devil aura finished gathering in his hands, Mei Feng grinned, turned his wrist, and pushed the mass of primordial devil aura out. The mass of primordial devil aura whistled through the air. Mo Tiange's expression suddenly changed. If she was hit by this mass of primordial devil aura, even if she didn't lose her life, she would at least lose half of it. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. These nascent soul cultivators clearly knew she had the key. If they didn't save her now, when would they? Although she hated these people, she did not wait for death. She pressed her wrist and a golden light shot out from her arm, pouring into the lotus umbrella. The umbrella suddenly lit up, and at the same time, she quickly fell down. You want to escape like this? Mei Feng sneered and waved his sleeve. Primordial devil aura immediately chased after her. The intermediate stage of the original level. Even though she has been under Fu Yaozi's guidance for many years and her capabilities have greatly increased and her cultivation level has reached the peak of the original level, this was still a gap she could not make up for. Sensing that the mass of primordial devil aura was getting closer and closer, Mo Tiange secretly clenched her teeth. She could only hold the lotus elemental umbrella tightly and use the heaven and earth fan in front of her to block it. If these old farts didn't attack, they wouldn't be able to open it. Amitabha! A chant of Buddha's name resounded like a huge bell. Mo Tiange felt a warm sensation on her body as a golden light enveloped her. At the same time, she heard the clear sound of a sharp weapon, and a figure swept over like lightning, blocking in front of her. Boom! The approaching mass of prime devil qi collided with a beam of red light. In an instant, the spiritual energy on the island surged and the weather changed. When the light dissipated, Emodong Mountain was stunned. She stood there in a daze, letting the wind caused by the fierce aura fluctuations tear her around. She loosened her grip and the lotus umbrella fell. After a long time, she found her voice and grabbed the sleeve of the person in front of her. The next moment, she hurriedly rubbed her eyes. I'm not seeing things, right? She sighed and pulled her hand away. You said you could take care of yourself. You've been gone for more than 50 years without any news. As soon as I saw you, you were fighting with your life. How did you take care of yourself? His voice carried a hint of complaint, but it was also full of concern. After confirming the person in front of her wasn't an illusion, Imo grabbed his hand and looked around. She wanted to say something, but after a long time, she only said, How did you become like this? She knew the pure yang technique could also preserve one's appearance. For so many years, his appearance had been maintained at the age of 23 or 24. Although the person in front of her wasn't old, he was obviously a few years older. There was even white hair on his head. What the hell happened? Seeing her appearance made Xianxia laugh. He gently patted her head and said, I'll tell you later. Imo regained her composure. She thought about the situation in front of her, took a deep breath, and suppressed her excitement. Although she was full of questions, didn't understand why he suddenly appeared here, didn't know how he found her, and didn't know what happened to him, she was sure he was real. These things could be asked in detail later. Fellow Daoist. Upon seeing Xianxia, Master Daoist Yuanmu narrowed his eyes and looked up at Progenitor Miaoying, full of questions. Progenitor Miaoying was a dignified Daoist nun in her 30s. She wore a plain Daoist robe and held a horsetail whisk in her hand. She always had a smile on her face, looking very friendly and kind. Fellow Daoist Yuanmu, fellow Daoists, I'm late. Please forgive me. She slightly lowered her head and saluted everyone. Junior Martial Sister Miaoying, there's no need to be so polite between us. Master Daoist Yuanmu greeted her with a smile. It's not time yet, so I'm not late. The others also greeted her one after another. Even Venerable Xiang, who had a bad temper, smiled at her. It could be seen that this Progenitor Miaoying was very popular. When they finished greeting each other, Master Daoist Yuanmu asked, Junior Martial Sister Miaoying, is this fellow Daoist your friend? Seeing his vigilant gaze, Progenitor Miaoying smiled and said, Yes, I met this fellow Daoist Qin not long ago and we had a pleasant conversation. Fellow Daoist Qin happened to come to the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for someone, so I invited him to come with me. As she spoke, she winked and sent a voice transmission, Fellow Daoist Yuanmu. Although this fellow Daoist Qin is only in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, his strength can't be underestimated. I'm afraid he's not weaker than late-stage cultivators like us. Upon hearing this, Master Daoist Yuanmu looked at Xianxia with something else in his eyes. He also asked via voice transmission, Junior Martial Sister, do you know this person's background? Is this the person he's looking for? Master Daoist Yuanmu's reaction confused Miaoying, so she replied, It seems so. This fellow Daoist Qin is said to be from the outer endless sea. A celestial pole cultivator? Progenitor Miaoying paused for a moment before nodding. Probably. At that moment, Xianxia was confronting Mei Feng. Mei Feng stood there vigilantly, staring coldly at Xianxia. Just now, when his mass of primordial devil aura was about to hit her, revered Avidya acted and used his golden bell shield to protect her. However, this new middle-stage nascent soul cultivator suddenly appeared and blocked his mass of primordial devil aura for her. This surprised Mei Feng and made him vigilant. He was surprised that there were actually two nascent soul cultivators who stood up for this stinky girl. Could it be that there was some kind of relationship between them? He was vigilant because in the past 50 years, he had been hiding and painstakingly cultivating only to reach the middle stage of the primordial devil art. He believed his primordial devil aura couldn't be resisted by cultivators in the same realm as him. However, this new cultivator, who was clearly in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm like him, was able to scatter his mass of primordial devil aura with just a magic weapon. He had never seen this cultivator before. Who are you, Your Excellency? Mei Feng said in a deep voice, "Let me give you a piece of advice. This woman and I have an irreconcilable hatred. Your Excellency, it's better if you don't intervene." She curled his lips into a contemptuous smile. "What if I insist on intervening?" Mei Feng's expression darkened and he said gloomily, "Then I'll have to compare notes with you." She waved his sleeves. The 3 yang real fire swords circled above his head. He sneered and said, "Why would I need to compare notes? It's better to fight with my life." "You?" Mei Feng's expression suddenly changed. If he still couldn't see the relationship between this cultivator and that bitch, he would be blind. However, this person's attitude made him unhappy and puzzled. An unknown cultivator actually dared to threaten him. The mysterious space was about to open, but this person was so reckless and wanted to fight with him with his life for a woman. "Fellow Daoist Mei." Master Daoist Yuan Mu called out. He looked at Mei Feng and said faintly, "I advise you to stop." "Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu." Mei Feng was stunned when he heard Master Daoist Yuan Mu's words. Then he said, "She's just a core formation junior and not a disciple of Juyan sect. Why are you protecting her?" Master Daoist Yuan Mu's expression was calm but inadvertently cold. He was the top cultivator in Yunzhong and also the head Grand Supreme Elder of Juyan sect. He was someone who could shake the cultivation world in Yunzhong with a stomp of his foot. Mei Feng was just an ordinary early-stage nascent soul devil cultivator before. Even though he had advanced to the middle stage now and his strength was quite extraordinary, he still didn't care about him. "Fellow Daoist Mei, didn't you ask clearly before you did something? This little friend Mo is the person the Fusheng sword has recognized as its master. If you kill her, not only will we all come here in vain, but the mysterious space in Sea of Returning Ruins will never appear again." When Mei Feng heard this, he was shocked. "What?" "Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu is right." Revered Avidya smiled and said, "Therefore, fellow Daoist Mei, we absolutely won't watch you kill this little friend." Mei Feng had to believe what the 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators said. His expression kept changing. One moment he glared fiercely at her. The next moment he looked hesitant. In the end, he clenched his teeth and snorted coldly. "That being the case, I'll let you live for a while longer." Master Daoist Yuan Mu and revered Avidya were very satisfied with what Mei Feng said. Compared to the mysterious space in Sea of Returning Ruins, what was a small core formation cultivator? No matter how big their hatred was, it couldn't compare to a fated chance in the deification realm. Unfortunately, they weren't satisfied for long. She said coldly, "Your Excellency, do you want to retreat unscathed?" Mei Feng was stunned. Then anger appeared on his face. "I don't care anymore, so what else do you want? You're just a core formation female cultivator. Do you really want to fight me to the death?" "Oomph." She stared at him and said coldly, "Unfortunately, the core formation female cultivator you mentioned is my Dao companion. You want to take my Dao companion's life, yet you still ask me what I want." Chapter 450. As soon as she said that, the scene became quiet. Mei Feng was startled. Master Daoist Yuan Mu, Venerable Wu Ming, and the others looked at each other but didn't say anything. The meaning of the word Dao companion to cultivators was thought-provoking. The so-called Dao companion was a companion who sought immortality and Dao, which was also what cultivators called husband and wife. In this cultivation world, any relationship was unreliable, but Dao companions were undoubtedly the closest kind of relationship. This was because, generally speaking, Dao companions were the only kind of relationship that one had decided on. Blood ties couldn't be chosen, and master-disciple relationships were often full of benefits. As for Dao companions, although there were also those who united because of benefits, the possibility was much lower than others. For most people, Dao companions were the companions they chose on the path to immortality. Cultivators were usually very vigilant. Since they had decided on a companion, it was relatively speaking, the person they trusted the most. Over a long period of time, when 2 people accompanied each other, their feelings were usually the deepest. From this point of view, hurting someone's Dao companion was no different from hurting the person themselves. Therefore, when Master Daoist Yuanmu and the others heard Xianxia's words, they didn't plan to stop him. A middle-stage nascent soul cultivator wouldn't have any face if his Dao companion was chased by others, and he didn't care. Besides, as long as the little girl recognized by the Fuxing sword was fine, what did it matter if others killed her? There was still one less person to fight for the fated chance. However, they originally thought that although this core formation junior was likely to be a disciple of a large sect or clan in the outer endless sea, she had no foundation in Yunzhong and didn't need to worry at all. But now, her Dao companion was also in Yunzhong, and this person was actually in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Master Daoist Yuanmu couldn't help but look at Miaoying progenitor. Just now, Miaoying progenitor said that although this fellow Daoist Qin was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, his methods and divine abilities were very extraordinary and probably not weaker than late-stage cultivators like them. In that case, this person had to be taken seriously. Scholar Yu obviously had the same concerns. He looked at Xianxia, then turned to Master Daoist Yuanmu and whispered, "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu, this situation?" Master Daoist Yuanmu sighed slightly and also replied, "What do you think, Mr. Yu?" Although this scholar Yu was not as good at using money and power, he was wise and resourceful. His thoughts often went straight to the point. It was thanks to his idea that the three sects had joined hands to search for the ruins of the 5 saints. Scholar Yu said, "As long as our 3 sects are united, fellow Daoist Miao Ying, fellow Daoist Gua, and the others will definitely stand on our side. As for a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator, we don't need to worry too much, but if that's the case, we won't be able to control this junior." Scholar Yu sighed and nodded. After a moment's thought, he added, "In truth, we can already tell from what happened on One Leaf Island that this junior isn't someone who is willing to be controlled. He dares to negotiate with our 3 sects on his own. She has Senior Fu Yaozi's guidance, so I'm afraid she has already prepared an escape route. We might not be able to do anything to her." What Mr. Yu said makes sense. Immortal Yuanmu pondered for a moment. "Since that's the case, we'll let her be. As long as she obediently opens the space and doesn't cause us any trouble." The others did not know about the secret voice transmission between Immortal Yuanmu and Scholar Yu, but they all saw their attitude of staying out of the matter. In fact, the other cultivators were eager for the two to fight. Many of them had grievances among the nascent soul cultivators, but they were worried that the space was about to open and the fortuitous opportunity was rare, so they tacitly did not bring up old grievances. If the two of them fought, the 2 mid-stage nascent soul cultivators would most likely end up with both sides suffering. When that time came, they would have 2 less formidable opponents after entering the space. Mei Feng was also aware of this. All these years, he had hidden himself to cultivate the Great Prime Demon technique, not daring to appear in front of others at all, because he had previously offended the Night Owl City Lord, Demon Lord Night Frost. However, when news of the secret land of the returning Ruin Sea came, he could no longer sit still. So what if he offended the Night Frost Demon Lord? If the Night Frost Demon Lord really wanted to take him down before the space opened, he would also lose his strength. When that time came, he would be suppressed by the other late-stage nascent soul cultivators when he entered the secret land. As for what would happen after it ended, who knew what would happen? Perhaps he had obtained a great fortuitous opportunity, or perhaps he would perish inside. The Night Frost Demon Lord was the same. That was why he dared to swagger over directly. However, this mid-stage nascent soul cultivator in front of him did not seem to think so. Mei Feng was very puzzled. Which cultivator in Yunzhong would be willing to miss the secret land of the returning Ruin Sea? It was related to the legend of the 5 Saints' soul formation. Moreover, looking at this person's cultivation level and magical powers, he should have heard of it long ago, but he had never heard of it. Could it be that this person's cultivation level had improved greatly in the more than 50 years he had been hiding in seclusion? Or could it be that the other party was not a cultivator in Yunzhong at all? Thinking of this, Mei Feng sneered in his heart. Whether it was Xiao Yang or Yuanzhou, the level of cultivation was lower than that of Yunzhong. If he was a cultivator from these two places, then it was very likely that this person was fierce in appearance but weak in heart. If this person was a cultivator from Yunzhong who had just advanced to the mid-stage, then it would be even easier. He was very confident in his great prime demon technique, and cultivators of the same level who had just advanced were no match for him. Fellow Daoist, how should I address you? Which large sect are you from? Mei Feng asked. He was only worried about one thing. If this person was a newly promoted Grand Supreme Elder of a large sect, then he would have to consider the force behind him. Qin, she said faintly, my surname is Qin, and my Daoist name is Shoujing. As for my sect, you don't need to worry about it. If you have the ability to kill me, even if someone comes to take revenge, they'll be thousands of miles away. Hearing this, Mei Feng's eyes shone with an ominous glint, but he still said in a deep voice, fellow Daoist Qin, if you weren't a cultivator from Yunzhong, you might not understand the significance of the Five Saints' secret land of the returning ruined sea. There are fated chances to soul formation in there. Qin, she smiled. You don't dare. You? Mei Feng looked angry. He just felt it was a waste of this opportunity. Since this person was so unreasonable, he could only consume some of his strength to kill him. Otherwise, wouldn't it be troublesome if he was plotted against again after entering the secret land? Thinking up to this point, Mei Feng shook his sleeves, and primordial devil aura rose. He said coldly, in that case, fellow Daoist Qin, please. Mei Feng's thoughts coincided with Qin Shi's. When he found traces of Tiange in Cloud Wing City, he originally planned to look for her immediately. Progenitor Miaoying asked him about his plan and did him a favor by asking the disciples of Jingshu sect to help him find out the whereabouts of Yi Xiaotian. Later, the disciples of Jingshu sect reported that Yi Xiaotian was heading north, possibly to the returning ruined sea via Nanzhou. Progenitor Miaoying then invited him to go with her. Qin Shi originally planned to refuse, but unexpectedly, he learned from Progenitor Miaoying that this matter was related to Qin Wei. The three major sects wanted to gather the 5 holy relics to open the mysterious space in the returning ruined sea, and Qin Wei had one of the holy relics, the Fuxing sword. After connecting the two incidents, Qin Shi was able to guess what happened. He was the only one who knew that Yi Xiaotian and Qin Wei were the same person. Yi Xiaotian heading to Sea of Returning Ruins was definitely related to this matter. And Progenitor Miaoying was invited by the 3 major sects to go to the returning ruined sea for the same matter. In this case, it was more appropriate for him to go with Progenitor Miaoying. Qin Shi was naturally interested in this secret place in the returning ruined sea. Where could he find a fated chance to advance to the deification realm in the celestial pole? He had just advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, so his cultivation speed had become very slow recently. He came to Yunzhong for 2 reasons. First, Tiange had been away for too long, so he couldn't let go of her. Second, he wanted to find some fated chances for himself. Besides, Tiange was involved in this matter, so he could take care of her if he went. But he didn't expect that as soon as he arrived, he would find Tiange being chased by a middle-stage nascent soul devil cultivator. Based on the reactions of the late-stage nascent soul cultivators, it wasn't difficult to guess that this devil cultivator didn't have any backup. That being the case, it was better to kill him before the secret place opened. It was better than being restrained by him after entering the secret place. Besides, this person had repeatedly indicated that he wanted to kill Tiange to vent his anger. If he wasn't eliminated, he would always be a hidden danger. Senior Martial Brother, Tiange whispered behind him, this person's cultivation technique is the same as Master Songfang's. Are you confident? Qin Shi had already noticed this. Others might not know what was going on with Master Songfang's cultivation technique, but he knew it very well. He smiled and said, don't worry. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't be so confident. Mo Tiange was stunned, but then she thought about it again. Master Songfeng was their archenemy, and they would have to fight him sooner or later. After Senior Martial Brother advanced to the nascent soul realm, he probably came up with a way to restrain Master Songfeng. She felt a little relieved and stepped back. I understand. The primordial devil aura on Mei Feng's body became thicker and thicker, almost enveloping her whole body. However, compared to Master Song Feng's black cloud, it was still a bit inferior. Qin Shi waved his sleeve. The three-yang real fire sword that had been revolving around him let out a clear cry and turned into a tangible sword aura. The sword aura was golden, but it was completely red and was tightly surrounded by the three-yang real fire. Seeing this, Master Daoist Junmu raised his eyebrows and said to Primordial Lady Miaoing, "The sword turned invisible. Fellow Daoist Qin's strength is really extraordinary." A cultivator's sword was originally a magic weapon, and all magic weapons had forms. Turning something tangible into intangible required not only a high cultivation level, but also a deep understanding of the nature of spiritual aura. The former wasn't difficult for cultivators above the nascent soul realm to meet this requirement, but the latter was absolutely impossible unless it was someone with excellent comprehension and a thorough understanding of the way of celestials. Primordial Lady Miaoing said with a smile, "If that wasn't the case, why would I praise this fellow Daoist Qin so much? In the whole of Yunzhong, probably only a few old guys like us can turn our swords invisible, and this fellow Daoist Qin is only about 300 years old." What? Master Daoist Yuanmu was taken aback. Turning his swords invisible meant that this fellow Daoist Qin was qualified to talk to them, cultivators in the late nascent soul realm. However, his lifespan was only 300 years old, which was a bit shocking for a powerful middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. Primordial Lady Miaoing still said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu, you're a top genius cultivator in Yunzhong. As far as I know, you advanced to the late stage of the nascent soul realm after you were 500 years old, right? And I'm even worse than you. I only advanced to the late stage when I was 700 years old." Master Daoist Yunmu took a deep breath and looked at Qin Shi with a meaningful gaze. "I thought Yunzhong had the highest cultivation level among all the continents, but now it seems I underestimated him too much." Chapter 451. Formless Sword Transformation. Mei Feng was also shocked. Although he was a devil cultivator, he was a nascent soul cultivator after all, so he still had a discerning eye. As soon as he saw this technique, he knew this person's divine power wasn't small, so he immediately became vigilant. However, in the past 50 years, the more he practiced the primordial devil art, the more he felt it was powerful. The techniques he practiced before couldn't be compared to it at all, and his body was tempered by the primordial devil aura to become extremely sturdy. He firmly believed that even if this person's divine power wasn't small, his primordial devil art wouldn't lose to him. At this thought, Mei Feng snorted coldly. His feet didn't move, but his body also melted into the black fog and floated in the air. Qin Shi didn't move, but the sword aura formed by his three-yang real fire sword was constantly changing. One sword aura turned into two, two into four, four into eight. In an instant, it turned into over 100 identical sword auras. These sword auras revolved around him at a regular speed, forming a sword formation. Each sword aura emitted a strong momentum. Seeing this, Emotienga operated the art of primordial origin to protect herself, but she was very happy. Although she hadn't advanced into the nascent soul realm, she could see that Qin Shi's method clearly showed that he had cultivated the sword art accompanying the three-yang real fire sword to a very high level. The divine power he practiced was good at destruction and famous for its power. Now that he'd cultivated the three-yang real fire sword to this stage, even if he were to fight against Master Song Feng, he'd still have the power to fight. But this Mei Feng obviously didn't practice the primordial devil great technique deeply, so he was far inferior to Master Song Feng. As soon as he saw Qin Shi's sword formation, Mei Feng's expression changed, and he immediately decided to make the first move. As the black aura on his body became thicker and thicker, wind suddenly blew on the island. The wind became stronger and stronger, carrying black devil aura and even covering the sky. This kind of movement made the nascent soul cultivators on the island change their expressions. Mei Feng's strength was also extraordinary to be able to cause such turbulence. Seeing this, the three devil monarchs all frowned. They practiced devil techniques, so it wasn't difficult to see that this devil technique was very advanced. The three of them secretly compared whether Mei Feng's devil technique was more advanced than theirs. Daoist Yuan Mu, this Mei Feng is also very strong. This battle is going to be interesting. Scholar Yu tapped the fan in his hand and said with interest. Reverend Yuan Mu smiled and asked, in Mr. Yu's opinion, which of the two will win? Scholar Yu stroked his chin and shook his head with a smile. One Daoist, one devil, each with their own unique moves. It's hard to say. In terms of cultivation, the two of them weren't too far apart. In terms of methods, one had formless swords, while the other had monstrous demonic energy. They both had their own divine abilities. Amitba. Paragon Avidya chanted the name of Buddha and said with a smile, these two fellow Taoists have extraordinary divine abilities. I'm afraid that both of them will suffer heavy injuries. Progenitor Miaoying's eyes flickered when she heard this. She said, I have a different opinion. Reverend Yuan Mu asked, Junior Martial Sister Miaoying has always had a unique insight. What did you see? Progenitor Miaoying smiled and said, this is not a friendly duel, but a fight to the death. This was suggested by fellow Taoist Qin. Scholar Yu's eyes flickered. He seemed to understand something. Junior Martial Sister Miaoying means, in the current situation, the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins is about to open. His Taoist companion is among the nascent soul cultivators and urgently needs help, but fellow Daoist Qin chose to fight to the death with a cultivator of the same realm. Isn't he afraid that his Taoist companion will be alone and helpless if both of them suffer heavy injuries? From what I know these days, this fellow Daoist Qin isn't a fool. When the late nascent soul cultivators heard this, they all fell silent. In that case, this fellow Daoist Qin was 80% sure he could kill Mei Feng? While the late nascent soul cultivators were discussing, Qin Shi and Mei Feng had already started fighting. Mei Feng's demonic aura gathered more and more, and suddenly, it rushed towards Qin Shi. The unique feature of primordial devil art was that it didn't require the help of magic weapons or other external objects during fights of magical powers. Demonic aura was their strongest means of attack. This primordial devil aura could both attack and defend, and it was extremely corrosive. If it was hit, it would invade the opponent's body. At that time, the person corroded by the demonic aura would be in excruciating pain. Qin Shi didn't panic at all. The sword aura formed by the three young real fire swords around him suddenly shone brightly. The golden light flickered, and the red light was dazzling, turning into a sea of sword lights. Boom! The sword formation and the primordial devil qi collided, resulting in a violent explosion of spiritual qi. Not to mention the core formation cultivators, even the nascent soul cultivators with slightly lower cultivation levels felt their minds tremble. Many people were horrified. The middle stage of the nascent soul realm was actually this powerful. Didn't it mean that early-stage nascent soul cultivators like them wouldn't last more than a few breaths against the opponent? Seeing this, revered Avidya flicked his kasaya, once again protecting the core formation juniors. The cultivation technique he practiced was gentle and good at defense. It was the most suitable for this kind of thing. Being enveloped by revered Avidya's golden light, Xianxia felt very grateful. She cupped her hands and bowed to him to express her gratitude. Although this revered Avidya was on the same side as Master Daoist Yuanmu and the others, it was already very rare for him to take care of her in such subtle ways. Qin. Fellow Daoist Mo, a voice rang in her ears. It was Ling Yunhe. Before, Mei Feng suddenly attacked, followed by Qin Shi's arrival. He was suppressed by the auras of two middle-stage nascent soul cultivators, so it was inconvenient for him to move. It wasn't until Xianxia retreated to the side that he had a chance to talk to her. So this is where fellow Daoist Mo's previous name came from. It's inconvenient for me to address you in the future. Ling Yunhe stared at her with a somewhat complicated smile. Seeing that Qin Shi was handling Mei Feng's attacks with ease, Xianxia felt a bit relieved. She then replied, to be honest, fellow Daoist Ling, my sex Daoist name is Qingwei. After I came to Yunzhong, I changed my name to Qin Wei. This surname is actually a coincidence. Is that so? Ling Yunhe smiled faintly and didn't say anything else about this matter. Just like her, he raised his head and watched the fight between the two of them attentively. Every time Mei Feng's primordial devil aura attacked, it was blocked by Qin Shi's sword formation. Mei Feng couldn't do anything to him. However, as the two of them fought, the strands of primordial devil aura slowly dispersed and lingered around Qin Shi's sword aura. Ling Yunhe frowned and said, "Fellow Daoist Mo, this devil aura is unusual. If the sword aura is corroded," Mo Tiange was also worried, but she said firmly, "Senior martial brother definitely has a way." After a few times, the primordial devil aura around Qin Shi's sword aura became more and more numerous. This black aura wandered around the sword aura, even causing the sword aura's light to dim a lot. Seeing this, Mei Feng burst into laughter. "Fellow Daoist Qin, my devil aura isn't ordinary devil aura. If I destroy your sword aura, let's see what you can do." Qin Shi frowned slightly, but in the next second, he sneered. "You want to destroy my sword aura with just this devil aura? Naive." Right after he said that, a flame suddenly sprang out from his arm. However, this flame wasn't red like his three young real fire. Instead, it was a cold, deep blue color. The flame sprang out from his arm and covered all the sword aura in an instant. The blue flame crawled slowly on the sword, from a deep blue color to a light blue, then to a deep blue. In the next second, Mei Feng's expression suddenly changed. These blue flames actually completely devoured the primordial devil aura wandering around his sword aura. He was in disbelief. Impossible. He'd seen the corrosive power of primordial devil aura with his own eyes. No matter how solid the material was, as long as it was devoured by primordial devil aura, it would be slowly corroded without exception. Before he could figure it out, Qin Shi had already retracted the blue flame. With a shake of his arm, the sword formation shone brightly and spread out inch by inch. Before this, his sword formation already had more than 100 sword auras. But now, one turned into two turned into four, making it impossible to count the number of people. These sword auras spread out in the air like a golden ocean. The momentum was so great that it almost made people feel like they'd be drowned in the next moment. Qin Shi made an incantation gesture and shouted, "Go!" The overwhelming sword aura surged towards Mei Feng. Mei Feng snorted coldly. His devil aura surged and protected him. The momentum of primordial devil aura was far inferior to Qin Shi's sword formation, but when the sword formation encountered primordial devil aura, it couldn't advance an inch. "You want to kill me with this?" Wishful thinking. Mei Feng's voice came from the black cloud. Qin Shi smiled coldly. Suddenly, several sword auras sprang out from his arm, but it was an even smaller sword formation. This small sword formation didn't have the vast momentum from before, nor did it have a dazzling light. Instead, it was faint blue and silently flew towards Mei Feng. Puff, puff, two light sounds rang out in succession. Several blue sword auras sprang out from Qin Shi's arm and pierced into the black cloud in less than a breath's time. A scream came from the black cloud. Mei Feng shouted angrily, "Impossible! This is impossible!" His primordial devil aura was actually pierced through. How was this possible? He was about to gather primordial devil aura to push these sword auras out, but the next moment, he suddenly felt a sharp pain and a burning sensation instantly drowned him. Boom! A ball of burning black aura fell down. The faint blue flame slowly swallowed the black aura bit by bit. In the end, even the person inside was burned to ashes. Only a Qiankuan bag fell out. Qin Shi heaved a sigh of relief. With a wave of his arm, all the sword auras merged into one. Finally, they turned into the three young real fire sword and returned to his body. Seeing this, the small island was silent for a while. Nascent soul cultivators had high standards. They could all see that the key to Qin Shi's victory was that domineering blue flame. But none of them recognized this thing. "Fellow Daoist Qin, you're very skillful." The first to react was progenitor Miaoing. She smiled slightly and swung her horsetail whisk, sending Mei Feng's Qianquan bag to Qin Shi. She said, "Fellow Daoist Qin, what kind of divine power is this?" Qin Shi took the Qianquan bag and answered, "This is my natal magic weapon, the 3-yang real fire sword." "Is that so?" Progenitor Miaoying asked again, "What is that blue flame? It's really domineering." Qin Shi answered with a smile, "That's a divine power I comprehended when I formed my nascent soul, extreme yang real fire. I'm only at the initial stage now. Sorry for making you laugh at me, fellow Daoist Miaoying." Progenitor Miaoying wanted to say something else, but the crisp sound of a bell suddenly came from the sky. The sound of the bell came with the wind. It seemed to come from very far away, but everyone could clearly hear it. Progenitor Miaoying stopped talking and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Ma, you're finally here." Upon hearing this, Emotienga looked up and saw a skinny old man riding a donkey in the air. Chapter 452. The ringing of the bell came from afar. Ding ling was crisp and pleasant to the ear. Once she heard it, she felt refreshed and intoxicated. Qin Shi suddenly turned around and said to her, "Focus and guard your heart." Emotienga immediately understood what he meant. As soon as she heard the ringing of the bell, her mind was involuntarily drawn to it. This should be a high-grade sound-type magic weapon. However, the other party didn't seem to want to attack, so she just needed to be careful and everything would be fine. Accompanied by the crisp ringing of the bell, the old man riding the donkey appeared to be moving slowly, but he arrived in front of her in an instant. This old man was very thin and wore a wrinkled dark blue Daoist robe. His hair was tied into a bun, his beard and hair were white, and his face was full of wrinkles, but he was smiling so much that his eyes couldn't be seen. He was riding the donkey with a calabash on his back, swinging his slender whip while humming to himself, but no one on the island dared to look down on him. In terms of appearance, this skinny old man looked no different from an old Daoist in the secular world who made a living as a fortune-teller, but no one on the island dared to look down on him. Because he was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, and even the donkey he was riding was an 8th-rank spiritual beast. This was the first time Emotienga saw an 8th-rank spiritual beast beside a cultivator. Spiritual beasts weren't easy to feed. Even for nascent soul cultivators, raising them to the 6th or 7th rank was already extremely difficult. Advancing to the 8th rank was equivalent to the early stage of the nascent soul realm for humans. The 8th rank was a hurdle for spiritual beasts, and it wasn't much easier for nascent soul cultivators to advance to the nascent soul realm. "Fellow Daoist Ma, you're a bit late." When this person landed, Master Daoist Yuanmu greeted him with a smile. The old man dismounted from the donkey, swung his whip lightly and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoists, thank you for waiting. Fortunately, I'm not late." While they were chatting, Qin Shi had already returned to Emotienga's side. "This is..." He looked at Ling Yunhe next to Emotienga with a questioning expression. Before Emotienga could speak, Ling Yunhe raised his hand and saluted. Junior Ling Yunhe, a disciple of Jiyan sect, greets senior. Although his cultivation level was inferior, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Qin Shi smiled and returned the salute, but he didn't say his name. In front of Ling Yunhe, he was a senior. That was enough. Ling Yunhe turned to look at Emotienga, then smiled at the two of them. "Fellow Daoist Emo, I won't disturb your reunion with your husband anymore. Call me if you need anything." Emotienga nodded with a smile. Ling Yunhe turned around, took 2 steps, and suddenly stopped. He looked back and said, "By the way, fellow Daoistim, during our trip to Carefree Valley, I gave you a returning favor medallion. Now that I've made my promise, the returning favor medallion..." Emotienga was dumbfounded. Only now did she remember this matter. She took out the token of repayment that she had forgotten about from her Qinquan bag and said with a smile, "I'm really sorry. I almost forgot about this thing." Ling Yunhe smiled and took the medallion of repayment. Without saying anything, he turned around and left. Qin Shi stared at his back thoughtfully. "What's wrong?" Emotienga was baffled. The two of them shouldn't know each other, right? It's nothing. She glossed it over. Since she didn't realize it, there was no need to say it out loud. From the moment they arrived on the island to the moment they killed Mei Feng, they didn't stop to rest, so the two of them finally had a chance to take a closer look at each other. Seeing that Tiange's cultivation level was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm and that she wasn't injured, she finally felt relieved. He held her hand and said with a sigh, "What happened to you? Why did the undersea passage to Yunzhong collapse? Why did you provoke these nascent soul cultivators? You were actually chased by a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. What if I came one step later?" Tiange didn't answer immediately. These questions couldn't be answered in a short time. Besides, she was fine now, so these questions weren't important. On the other hand, she looked like he was obviously in trouble. She said, "Take your time. Senior Marshal brother, let's talk about you first. Why did you come to Yunzhong? Also, how did you become like this? A few years ago, I sensed the blood oath. Was it because you were injured? What about your injuries? Have they healed?" Upon hearing her question, she smiled and stroked her face. "It's all right. If my injuries hadn't healed, I wouldn't have been able to kill that devil cultivator." He said, "You've been gone for 50 years without any news from me. How could I not be worried? At first, I sensed you were injured, so I thought maybe you needed time to heal, so you didn't come back. But 30 years passed and I came out of closed-door meditation, but you still didn't come back. At that time, I was worried that something might have happened to you. Later, I followed the route you left, but I found that the passage had collapsed and I couldn't pass through it. Now I know why you didn't come back." Tiange sighed. "If the passage hadn't collapsed, I would have gone back long ago. Not long after I came to Yunzhong, I met Mei Feng. He was the city lord of Starfall City in the Devil Domain. I don't know where he got the primordial devil technique, but he tricked more than 10 core formation cultivators into helping him practice devil techniques. In the end, because of me, all his efforts were in vain." Later, his Starfall City was destroyed by City Lord Yishao. At that time, I was injured by him, so I could only hide in the virtual sky world to heal. It took me 10 years to stabilize my realm. Later, one of the 5 holy objects in Yunzhong, the Heavenly Devil Tower, appeared, and the whole of Yunzhong fell into turmoil. I was going to leave, but I found that the passage had collapsed. "So you were injured by him back then?" She frowned, glanced at Mei Feng's burnt body, and said coldly, "Then he didn't feel wronged when I killed him. Even if she hadn't come, she would have killed Mei Feng when she had the strength. If she hadn't been injured by him, she wouldn't have stayed in Yunzhong for so long. In the end, the South Pole Island sank, and she couldn't go back even if she wanted to. However, this person was already dead, so Tiange didn't want to talk about it. She asked again, "Senior Marshal brother, how did you come to Yunzhong? Did you cross the South Sea?" "What else could I do?" She reached out and stroked her hair. "I sensed you were injured. Although I was worried, I believed you could deal with it yourself. Moreover, I was in a critical moment of my closed-door meditation at that time, so I couldn't spare myself. But later, I found that the passage collapsed. With your cultivation level, you couldn't cross the South Sea and come back. If you want to cross the South Sea, you have to form your nascent soul, but how can you be sure about forming your nascent soul? After thinking about it, I could only come to Yunzhong to pick you up. Then your injuries, I told you I'm fine," she comforted her. "After I found the passage collapsed, I decided to come to Yunzhong by myself. However, I asked Master's opinion. Master thought that although I've made some progress in my divine power, my cultivation level is still low. The South Sea is dangerous, and I didn't have much confidence, so I decided to improve my cultivation level first." He smiled and said, "Before you left so many medicinal pills. It was with these medicinal pills that I was able to enter the middle stage in one fell swoop." Hearing this, Tiange couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, she left all the medicinal pills for nascent soul cultivators. Otherwise, she didn't know how many years it would take for him to advance and how many years it would be before the two of them could meet again. "When I advanced to the middle stage and you still didn't come back, I decided to come to Yunzhong. The South Sea is really dangerous. I spent a lot of time and thought I made perfect preparations, but in the end, I was still seriously injured when I crossed the sea. I see. Crossing the South Sea had always been considered an extremely dangerous thing. Even late-stage nascent soul cultivators couldn't guarantee that nothing would go wrong. Fortunately, I finally made it to Yunzhong alive. However, when I crossed the sea, I lost a Qiankuan bag. That Qiankuan bag contained a lot of spiritual herbs and sundries. Because of that, I had to delay healing my injuries. Although he was standing in front of her, Emotienga's heart still skipped a beat. Then your injuries, Qin, she said with a smile, they're nothing. It's mainly because the sea beasts in the South Sea were too powerful. They heavily injured my body, but my dantian and meridians weren't seriously injured. He paused for a moment, then continued, since I was injured, I had to find a place to stay and heal my injuries first. It took me a few years to finally restore my cultivation level, but my body was a lot worse. If I hadn't practiced body refining technique, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to restore my cultivation level in just a few years. So that's why you became like this? Emotienga finally felt relieved. For cultivators, as long as their dantian and meridians were intact, physical injuries would be healed after some rest. Qin, she nodded. After my injuries were mostly healed, I looked for suitable spiritual herbs while looking for your whereabouts. But you didn't use the names Yi Xiaotian and Emotienga, so I couldn't find any clues for a while. Later, I found a sect disciple's order to look for Qin Wei and saw your portrait. Only then did I know you changed your name. But Qin Wei disappeared for many years. Even the big sects in Yunzhong couldn't find her, so how could I find her? Emotienga was puzzled. Senior martial brother, since you came to Yunzhong, why didn't you use a sound-transmitting talisman to contact me? Qin, she smiled bitterly. There was a sound-transmitting talisman in the Qiankuan bag I lost. Emotienga was stunned and sighed helplessly. How could it be so coincidental? If she had contacted him at that time, she definitely wouldn't have chosen to come to the Sea of Returning Ruins now. The reason why she chose to go to the Sea of Returning Ruins now was to get some fated chances there so she could advance to the nascent soul realm and return to the celestial pole. If the two of them had met at that time, she would have chosen a safer way to advance to the nascent soul realm. Once she succeeded, she would have gone through the South Sea again and borrowed a magic weapon from Nie Wushang to cross the sea. At that time, the danger of returning to the celestial pole would be much smaller. As for this secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins, it wouldn't be too late to come back when they had enough strength. But there was no turning back now. With so many nascent soul cultivators here, they could only think about it after entering the secret place. However, she had Fu Yaozi as her master to guide her, and now she had Qin Shi's help, so she was much more confident than before. Is this fellow Daoist Qin? A voice suddenly came from the side. The two of them turned around and saw the queen of the nascent soul cultivator surnamed Ma leading the donkey. At that moment, he was smiling so widely that only his teeth could be seen. This was a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed politely. Qin, she said, "Yes, it's me. Greetings, fellow Daoist." The skinny old man stroked his sparse beard and said, "Fellow Daoist Qin is really capable." This old man sensed the power of fellow Daoist Qin's magic weapon from afar, especially the last divine ability. It's called Extreme Yang Real Fire, right? This old man has never seen the power of this fire in my life. Thank you for your praise, fellow Daoist. Oh, right. The old man seemed to have just remembered. I haven't introduced myself to fellow Daoist Qin. This old man's surname is Ma. Because I'm always accompanied by donkeys, the fellow Daoists who are familiar with me jokingly call me Old Donkey Ma. Chapter 453. Old Donkey Ma. Emotienga couldn't help but smile. She had seen quite a number of late nascent soul cultivators. Among them, there were some who were kind and approachable, but she had never seen someone like old Donkey Ma, who did not care about the demeanor of late nascent soul cultivators and teased his name. She was also stunned. So it's fellow Daoist Ma. Old Donkey Ma turned to Imotienga with a smile. Is this little girl the person the Fusheng sword recognized as its master? Imotienga stopped smiling and bowed. Greetings, senior. You don't have to be so serious. Old Donkey Ma smiled. I'm really envious of you for being recognized by Senior Fuyao Zi. Imotienga couldn't help but ask, is Senior Ma also one of Senior Fuyao Zi's admirers? Hee, Old Donkey Ma said, how many individual cultivators in Yunzhong don't admire Senior Fuyao Zi? Before Senior Fuyao Zi passed away, he publicized many of his cultivation experiences to the world. Who doesn't admire such behavior? We individual cultivators in Yunzhong have benefited a lot from Senior Fuyao Zi. Imotienga remembered Lingyan said there was an individual cultivator among late-stage nascent cultivators. It seemed that person was Senior Ma. She said respectfully, Senior, as an individual cultivator, managed to cultivate to the late stage of nascent soul. You're also a talented person. Far from it, far from it. Old Donkey Ma waved his hand. Not to mention the gap between late-stage nascent soul and deification, even when Senior Fuyao Zi was in the nascent soul realm, he was much more brilliant than me. Old Donkey Ma's expression was very natural. He didn't look proud at all and seemed to be speaking from the bottom of his heart. Imotienga now recognized Fuyao Zi as her master. She couldn't help but have a good impression of him since he respected her master so much. Oh, I heard that the two of you have reunited after a long time. I guess you have a lot to talk about. This old man is just here to say hello. I won't disturb you anymore. After saying that, he waved his hand and led the donkey away. Imotienga and she couldn't help but smile at each other. The donkey that old Donkey Ma was leading looked no different from an ordinary donkey. However, its hooves were snow white and its eyes were like jade. Clearly, it was an extremely precious spirit beast, just that it looked like a donkey. While looking at the donkey, Imotienga said, 8th rank spiritual beasts are really awe-inspiring. It'd be great if Xiaohua and the others could also make a realm breakthrough. She didn't know why, but after all these years, the three of them didn't show any signs of advancing to the 5th rank. According to reason, the spiritual plants in the virtual sky world were always free for them to eat, so their cultivation speed shouldn't be much slower than hers. It seemed she had to ask Fei Fei next time. She smiled and said, "What's the rush?" Spirit beasts don't advance as fast as human cultivators. They have a long lifespan. Imotienga thought it made sense. In the past few years, because she kept feeding them medicinal pills without stopping, these spiritual beasts advanced very quickly. She almost forgot about this matter. Perhaps the reason why Xiaohua and the others didn't advance was because of spiritual beasts' instincts? By the way, how is Master? Is his injury better? She smiled. Master can be said to have profited from a disaster. The medicinal pills you left not only preserved his cultivation level but also helped him smoothly break through to the late stage. Is that so? Imotienga was pleasantly surprised. Master is now a late-stage cultivator? And, if not, how could I advance to the middle stage so smoothly? Advancing to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm in 50 years. This cultivation speed was really amazing. In addition to a large number of medicinal pills, he also had the help of late-stage nascent soul cultivators. If Lord Daoist Jinghe advanced smoothly and Lord Daoist Jinyang had the help of 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, his advancement would be much smoother. Imotienga was very happy to hear this news. She knew that although her master was arrogant, he was actually quite unlucky on the path of cultivation. Although he was talented and had good comprehension, he never encountered any amazing fated chances. He had to rely on himself to cultivate step by step. After several hundred years of accumulation, he could only reach the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Now that her master could advance to the late stage, he could finally hold his head high. After being separated for more than 50 years, the two of them felt they had countless things to talk about. their own experiences, the situation of their old friends, the changes in the celestial pole, the situation in Yunzhong, and how they missed each other. Another half a day passed, but no cultivators came to the island. After the late-stage nascent soul cultivators discussed for a while, Master Daoist Yuanmu said to the two of them, "Fellow Daoist Qin, little friend Mo, time's up. Shall we open the space now?" Qin Shi looked down at Mo Tiange. Although he had a general understanding of this matter, he didn't know it as well as Mo Tiange. Mo Tiange naturally didn't have any objections. She was already prepared and briefly told Qin Shi her plan, so she said, "Senior, please make the decision." Master Daoist Yuanmu nodded, looked up at the cultivators on the island, and said loudly, "Fellow Daoists, the agreed time is up. We'll open the Five Saints' secret place now." Hearing this, all the nascent soul cultivators on the island showed excited and solemn expressions. They gathered on this island for the deification fated chances in the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins. But since there was a fated chance for deification in this space, it must be very difficult to break through. In addition, there were so many nascent soul cultivators on this trip, and they were in a competitive relationship. With treasures in front of them, they also had to be on guard against other people's dirty tricks, so they had to be vigilant. The reason they could get such an opportunity was because of the invitation from the three groups that had holy relics. The other party had holy relics, so even if they had no other choice, how could they possibly share the fated chance with others? Therefore, it would certainly be very difficult for them to get the fated chance. After announcing that the Five Saints' secret place was about to open, Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't immediately call the five juniors to start. Instead, he slowly swept his gaze over the cultivators on the island. Master Daoist Yuanmu's cultivation level was among the best in Yunzhong, and he was also the head Grand Supreme Elder of Jiuyan sect. Although he usually didn't manage things, he definitely had the dignity he deserved. Now that his gaze swept over them, these nascent soul cultivators who were usually awe-inspiring couldn't help but feel their imposing manner suppressed by him. "Everyone," he said slowly, "the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins benefits from us, the Five Saints in Yunzhong. Therefore, although we have the key to the space, we don't dare to take the Five Saints' secret place for ourselves. However, everyone must know that we suffered huge losses in obtaining the space key. Our sect's soul-restraining bead and Huayan Temple's inescapable net were passed down through generations of painstaking inheritances. Therefore, before we enter this mysterious space, we'll first set a few rules. What do you think?" None of the cultivators expressed any objections to what he said. The cultivator surnamed Nan from Danxia sect was the first to say with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu is willing to share the Five Saints' secret place with us, so we're naturally grateful. Fellow Daoists have contributed more than us, so it's only right that you get more benefits." Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange couldn't help but take another look at him. Cultivators had amazing memories. She remembered that this cultivator who looked like a rich man was the one who paid attention to her on One Leaf Island, but she didn't recognize him. What this person said just now was really thought-provoking. His expression was very sincere, and what he said was also reasonable. However, get more benefits. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed like there was a hidden meaning behind it. In the face of benefits, there weren't many reasonable cultivators, especially nascent soul cultivators like them. What they were fighting for was the fated chance to advance to the deification realm. How could they be willing to give this to others? If other cultivators heard what he said, they probably couldn't help but have other thoughts in their hearts. She didn't know whether Master Daoist Yuanmu also felt the same. He cast a rather meaningful glance at the cultivator surnamed Nan and said, "Fellow Daoist Nan is so understanding. This old man is really touched." Under such a gaze, the cultivator surnamed Nan couldn't help but turn his head away. However, he still wore a smile on his face, hiding his embarrassment very well. In terms of strength, this cultivator surnamed Nan was a lot weaker than Master Daoist Yuanmu. Right now, dawning Danxia sect couldn't fight against Jiuyan sect at all, so he could only avoid Master Daoist Yuanmu's sharp edge. Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't pester him anymore and continued to say, Everyone, I've discussed this matter with the late nascent soul fellow Daoists and received their approval. Therefore, this matter is also the intention of all late nascent soul cultivators. Upon hearing what he said, the nascent soul cultivators on the small island all revealed cautious expressions. What all late nascent soul cultivators said was no small matter. The 11 late nascent soul cultivators present were the best cultivators in Yunzhong. Every one of them had astonishing divine abilities and could easily kill early-stage nascent soul cultivators, let alone 11 late nascent soul cultivators working together. It could be said that these 11 late nascent soul cultivators could completely wipe out everyone else. It seemed these so-called rules were already a fact, and the others simply had no room to object. It was just that they didn't know if it would harm their interests. Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't make them wait for too long. He slowly said, "First, let me remind everyone that according to the 5 saints' last words, this mysterious space is actually a spatial crack left behind from ancient times. There are many unknown restrictions inside, and entering this space is extremely dangerous. If you encounter anything, you'll have to bear the consequences." As soon as he finished speaking, someone said, "Fellow Daoist Junu, how can there be no danger in a land of opportunity? The greater the opportunity, the higher the danger. This is something we all know, so naturally, we won't have any complaints." All the nascent soul cultivators nodded. They weren't low-level qi refining and foundation establishment cultivators. As nascent soul cultivators, they naturally understood this principle. Master Daoist Yuanmu continued, "Second, this space is very large. After entering, everyone can split up and search for treasures. If there are any disputes during the treasure search, we won't interfere. However, you must not harm the lives of the 5 young Daoists who have the keys. If anyone violates this taboo, we'll immediately kill them." At this point, Master Daoist Yuanmu's smiling expression was now filled with murderous intent. Without waiting for anyone to say anything, Master Daoist Yuanmu continued, "Third, if everyone finds any treasures at the same time, the 5 of us who have contributed the keys will have the priority to choose." The others were silent for a while after hearing this. The first 2 were just reminders, but this was the only one that involved their immediate interests. In the end, it was progenitor Miao Ying who smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Yuanmu's request is supported by us and the other nascent soul cultivators. The 5 sacred relics are extremely precious. Since you've contributed them, you naturally have the priority to choose." Hearing progenitor Miao Ying's words, someone quickly echoed, "That's right. We've already benefited from fellow Daoist Yuanmu and the others. We didn't do anything, but we were able to enter the legendary 5 saints' secret place. What else can we ask for?" Many people nodded, and those who didn't nodded also tacitly agreed. Seeing that no one had any objections, Master Daoist Yuanmu smiled. "Then it's settled. Apart from these 3 points, there's nothing else to explain. Once this mysterious space is opened, there's only exit, not entry. Whether you can get out or not will depend on your own abilities." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.